And I do have a gavel. I'm Brenda Pavich, the vice chairman, and when I took the vice chairman position, Joe Hinton promised me I would never be in the position to chair the committee, so I'll have words with him at another time. Until then, we do have a quorum with the members present, Pavich, Shepherd, and Wingo. Joe Hinton is actually on his way. Little problem, I think, on I-35 from what I understand. Good afternoon to the members in the audience and to those on the internet. First item of business on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the January 28th, 2009 committee meeting. Have the members had a chance to review the minutes, and if so, are there any questions or comments or edits? There being none, may I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next item of business is the Deputy Commissioner's report. Mr. Alonzo, Roman numeral A, progress report on creating a culture of excellence. I understand we do not have a handout for this. This is a verbal.
That's right. It's
discussion.
a report that I will make. We will flash one slide up on the screen.
Okay,
But
thank
the
you.
rest of it, I will make the comments.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brenda. I appreciate the opportunity to come before the committee at this meeting to make a report on the progress of what I call creating a culture of excellence in the operations of the agency. 2 years ago, almost to the date, at my first AOC meeting, April of 2007, I introduced this concept to the board and specifically to the committee. And I would like to, at this time, ever since we've been talking about that culture of excellence, and at this time, I'd like to brief you on where we are in the progress that we have made and that we still have yet to make. Briefly, the concept that I have up there and that I've been talking about is that we can build a culture of excellence in the operations of this agency by building that on three pillars. Those three pillars that I identified were improving our processes and controls, number one. Number two, a succession plan for the agency. And number three, the enterprise-wide risk management, development of ERM, enterprise risk management. Today's report is an update on that progress and on the goals that we have and the progress that we've made on the goals towards that I shared with you 2 years ago. I'd like to make it very clear that the report is not about me. It's not about what I have done, but rather to report on the team that we have assembled here in the agency and the team that is really responsible for the successes that we have achieved up to date. To that end, I'd like to mention a few team members. I know that I'm going to leave out some, but the ones that I rely most on a daily basis. As you know, 2 assistant commissioners in the agency report to me, one of them being Dan Weaver. Dan is back at the back of the agency, of the room. He's our assistant commissioner for business and support services. You have heard many times from Dan, and I have had occasions to work with him. Dan has assumed a leading role in my reorganization plan. He took responsibility when I combined 2 divisions into one. And took a responsibility of leading that combined division. Dan is a person that I rely on quite often. He is a great asset to the agency and to me personally, and I thank him for what he has done for us. And the other assistant commissioner that reports to me is Darla Fent. Darla is behind the pole, hiding. Darla is assistant commissioner for IT, for information technology. Darla has been here with the agency, but not that long, but she has many years of experience working in state business for state agencies, and in fact also worked at one of our institutions of higher education in IT. Darla is considered among her peers in state government as one of the elders, and I say that most respectfully, Darla. because she is well recognized and well respected for her expertise, and when she speaks, she listens. They listen. And so, Darla, we're glad to have you here with us. Maria Moreno, I don't think she's in the room. She's probably maybe listening, but she is our interim director of HR, of Human Resources. She has been charged with cleaning up and tightening our HR policies and procedures, and she's in the midst of doing that. The next person is Susan Corrine, who you will hear from later. You have heard from her at other times. She's our Deputy Assistant Commissioner, Susan, back sitting in the front row, for Business and Support Services. One of the first things that I did upon arriving at the agency, shortly after I hired my Assistant Commissioner, Dan Weaver, is we went and raided A&M, the agency where I came from, and brought Susan to lure her to Austin because I knew that she could contribute to the agency. We hired her away from A&M. We gave her the general charge of what our vision is and what we're looking for, and she has run with it and continues to run with that charge. Patrick Kershak. Patrick is sitting in the second row, a former employee of the Bond Review Board. We also hired him, but we went inside the agency to do that. We went up to Susan Brown's division and stole him away from Susan Brown. But Patrick brings a whole new level of rigor and expertise in our bond programs and in our loan programs, and we're very glad to have him here. We continue to shore up our staff, not only with new hires, but by placing existing staff, moving them around to where we think the right position is that they will best serve the agency. I don't believe our new hires are in the agency in the room, but I would like to mention that recently we hired a director of financial reporting, Mr. Ken Martin, who has been with us for about a month and a half or so, maybe less than that, and a director of contract services, and I may not be getting the title exactly right, but that's the duties that she has, and that is Kathy Woods. Both of those people report to Susan Corrine. We look forward to much leadership from them in their respective areas, and the little that we have seen and the little bit of time that they have been here, we have reason to believe that they will step up to the plate. In summary, when it comes to staff, we continue to hire new staff, to look for new staff, and to move existing staff around as needed. All we ask of staff that wants to come work for us in our divisions is that they have a commitment to quality, a dedication to our mission, and to be customer-oriented. And if they can come to us with those commitments, they will probably fit in our organization. Mr. Hinton, how are you?
Thank you very much. Out of breath.
Yeah, out of
Trying to
breath.
deal with Austin traffic.
You didn't miss much, sir. I'm in the middle of my report here.
Good.
I would then like to briefly update you on the three pillars that I have chosen to be what we build this culture of excellence. I'm going to be brief. The first one, and I'll choose the easy one first, is the Enterprise Risk Management, ERM as we call it. And I label this as easy not because it is an easy thing to accomplish, but because this effort was already underway when I arrived at the agency 2 years ago. Thanks to Mr. Tony Tagby, our internal auditor, he had already contracted with a outside consultant, the Crawfords, who some of you are familiar with. And I'm happy to report that we have trained all the units in the agency on enterprise risk management. They have all gone through the training. They have all identified the risk in their respective areas, including the Commissioner's office. They have developed the risk footprint, and so we're well on our way to managing risk in the organization. Not only has the staff been trained in ERM, but they continue to use the Crawford model to identify and to mitigate the risks that they face in their daily operations. And I know that the overall effect is that the staff is aware that there is risk, but most importantly, they are aware that those risks must be managed. It's not enough to identify it, but it must be managed. We will soon have to probably have another round of training for our new employees that have come in since then, but we're working on that. The second pillar that you see there is that I want to touch on is the pillar of succession planning. I've charged our HR department with the task of taking the lead on this effort, to working with our divisions in identifying the next round of leaders for the agency. The divisions are aware that it is a risky thing to ignore this very important task. And there is evidence, and I'm seeing evidence, that this effort is receiving some serious consideration within our divisions. Many supervisors now make this a part of their personnel evaluations for their supervisors, and they're holding them responsible for training and developing employees. We will continue to develop the bench strength for this agency and to plan for the future. The third pillar is that actually listed first on the slide, but it's the third one that I want to mention on is the one that has to do with continuous improvement of our processes and our controls. This is perhaps one of the most difficult challenges that we have faced. Not that the other ones were not without challenges, but this one here is even more challenging because there is so much to improve. Also because we must continue to improve on the improvements. In other words, it's a never-ending process. One of the things that makes this challenging, at least for me and my team as we started on this, is that very often, as probably can be, as you can guess, we were met with the attitude, which I think is common but unfortunately deadly, attitude of, we have always done it this way, why should we change now? And so the first challenge that we had was to communicate that we need to change the culture, we need to do things differently, and that the status quo will not be accepted anymore. And so we went out with that message. I'm glad to say that many people have gotten the message. Others did not get it. And those that did not or would not subscribe to that, unfortunately are not, or maybe fortunately, are not with us anymore. I could probably take up the rest of the afternoon describing and listing for you some of the specific steps that we have taken to improve our processes and our controls, but in the interest of time, I picked out a few that I would quickly like to go over. One of the things that we are very big on is a streamlined process. As we look at a process, as we look at signatures, as we look at routing slips and routing processes for different documents, the first question that we ask is, does it make sense? And number two, does that add value to our organization and to the process? And if the answer to either one is no, we just simply don't do it. We're not into doing things just because somebody wants a new form or a new process. Number two, we have implemented a web-hosted travel management system that reduces our manual entry and our handling of paperwork and our documents and has reduced error, and we're well on our way to making that part of our daily operations. Number three, we will soon be announcing to the agency an application tracking system. I think it's called NeoGov, right? Neo.gov. That will allow our HR department, to manage the mountains of applications that we receive on a daily basis. And that is going to allow us to transmit this to the divisions, handle it, track it, all electronically, instead of having to deal with all this paperwork that we have dealt with in the past. We think that this is we're convinced that this will make our operations much more efficient and improve on the application process. Number four, we have implemented what we call a web-focused reporting system, where the divisions can go in and take a look at their budgets. They can monitor how much they've expended in the different categories. They can manage their budgets and their expenditures, and we're very proud of that effort. Number five, we are investigating a contracts management system. One of the things that I might have mentioned, I don't remember if I did in another meeting, is that we established a management group, a contracts management group that handles all our contracts, and that we track it, and we know what the money that's coming in, we know what the money that's going out, and we know that it's supported by documentation and reporting and so forth. Well, we're looking into a electronic system that will help us manage those contracts. We hope to roll this out in the near future, and we hope to gain many efficiencies from that. Number 6, we, of course, as you well know, because we have reported on this repeatedly or several times within the last 2 years, is we implemented the HELMS system, our loan management system that has significantly increased our efficiency in all aspects of our loan program. We're still working through that. We've only been at it, in fact, 2 years this month, but we're getting much better, and we're, in fact, sometimes deriving much information from there, much more than what we expected, and that is a good thing. Number 7, we have managed the consolidation of our IT programs into a statewide data service center. Again, the cutover was 2 years ago this month, in April of 2007. Thanks to Darla and her team, we've managed to do that. I must tell you that there are still many issues and many challenges and many questions at the statewide level, but we continue to stay on top of that. We continue to meet. In fact, we met with the director of DIR about a week or two ago with the commissioner, our commissioner, present to walk through and talk through some of those issues. But we are on top of that, and we're well on our way to being part of the statewide consolidated service center. Number 8, this is no small task, and we're really proud of it. We have had 2 years of an audit, 2 reports of our standalone financials in the GASB 34 format. And both years we were happy and proud to report that they both received an unqualified opinion from our outside auditors. And we are working feverishly to bring a third one to you that we hope and that we will do everything we can to also have the same type of opinion on it. The list can go on and on. There are many, many tasks that we have worked and we have implemented, some of large proportions, some of small, but they all have made a difference. And while all those specifics that I have mentioned are important, one of the things that we are most proud of is the fact that we have created an environment of transparency and openness in everything that we do here at the agency. Whether it is the budget system that we implemented, where we now have what we call a bottoms-up budget, where the divisions build their budget and then we start consolidating it and bring it to the board. And, you know, while some of you may say, well, you know, isn't that the way it's supposed to be? The answer is yes, but it was not. It was not done that way in the agency, and so we're very proud of that. We have full participation by the divisions, and they not only participate and build their budgets, they take ownership and they manage those budgets, and they become part of that. The division heads, you know, we try to have very open communication. We try to have very little secrets. In fact, I'm not aware of any secrets that we have. We post the budget on the intranet. Everybody knows what everybody's budget is. Everybody knows what they came up with. So we're proud of that. The expectation is that we expect everybody to have accountability and productivity, and we make that very clear. We have established 4 work groups in the agency that meet regularly, and they advise me, those work groups advise me on such issues as HUB, our HUB initiative, our business processes, our HR processes, and our IT processes. This gives me a chance as the CFO to hear from those that are closest to the issues and to hear what their concerns are. I do not want to give the impression that we are there and that everything is fixed, because even if I did, I know that you wouldn't believe me. But you know, we still have many challenges ahead of us. We know that. In fact, you will hear shortly when the internal auditor comes up and delivers one of the audits that he has sent to you. You will see that we still have some challenges. We still have some areas of weaknesses that we need to improve on. We take those challenges very seriously. We pledge that we will continue on our road to a culture of excellence. We are confident that we will make even more progress in the next 2 years than we have in the first 2 years. We pledge that to you. We are very pleased with what we have done, but I always tell staff, while we are pleased and proud, we cannot be satisfied, because the day that we become satisfied is when we go back to accepting status quo. So we will continue on that road. I'd like to close this report by acknowledging, even though he is not here, and expressing my appreciation for the support that Commissioner Paredes has given me and my team. Without that support, we would not have been able to accomplish even one fraction of the progress that we have made. His confidence in the team is what gives us reason to come in every day and to continue to work hard and to continue to make improvements. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't thank you, the board, for your support. Every one of you have been very supportive, very encouraging, and we thank you for that support. I will be glad to respond to any questions that any member may have.
Thank you, Dr. Alonso. Any questions from the board committee members? Okay, I have one question and one comment, and then I'm going to turn it back over to the chairman. My question is, first of all, I'm thrilled to see all of the work that you're doing for this agency and the efficiencies and so on. Can you, I would love to see, I'm assuming there are going to be some terrific cost savings too that we can see from some of these streamlinings and efficiencies, and also from computerizing some tasks. Can you report to us on that next committee meeting? I would love to see that from a dollar standpoint too.
We will do that.
Okay, terrific. And then the other comments I have are going to go over into the next agenda item, and it is now my pleasure to hand back the gavel to Chairman Hinton for the next agenda item, which is Roman numeral 3B, second quarter financial report. We do have a 2-page handout on that. Thank you.
Okay. This is one of the improvements that I've talked about, and that is the quarterly financial report that we provide to the board. It was sent out with the materials. It's a colorful page. It has different colors on it, but it's where we track our expenditures and report to you. We'd be glad to answer any questions or any comments on that from any board member. Again, this is something that I believe we're on maybe our 4th or 5th, maybe not even that many, that we have brought to the board. It's something that we just felt was important, that the board should be kept apprised of what the status of our financials are on a quarterly basis. So we'd be glad to answer any questions or provide any information.
Yeah, I have a request. First of all, I'm glad that we're reporting to the committee on a quarterly basis, budget to actual. I mean, as board members, we have a responsibility to look at this. And that ties into what Dr. Alonso was just talking about in terms of transparency, openness, budgets, division by division, starting from zero and building up to the agency. And I think we need to see more of that in this deliverable, because right now we're getting some of the information, but I don't think in a format that makes sense at a board level. What I'd like to request is that you work with internal audit and develop a document building on the one that you've given us in our packet, but one that makes more sense. And once a year, I do think we have to look at this information division by division as well, or certainly once during the biennium. But on a quarterly basis, I would say not only by strategy, but in more of what I would refer to as an income and expense report, which I think you can, which I think you will be able to do, even though it's not necessarily income and expense that's flowing through here, it's appropriations and disbursements. But nevertheless, I would like to see your area work with internal audit on this.
We certainly will do that. This is a report for the board. We want it to be meaningful. We
Yeah.
want it to provide the information you need.
Yeah.
So we will work to get it to that point.
Well, and I think why I want internal audit involved, obviously, is, again, from a board standpoint, we approve the audit plan every year, and the individual audit reports. That's a foundation for us from a financial reporting standpoint, from an internal control standpoint. Auditors are always saying, follow the money. We need a document that's in a format that will make it a little easier for us to do that with. So I'm looking at that. That's really somewhat of a foundation document for me.
We will get it there.
Great.
And we'll keep on trying until we get it. We get it to what the report gives you, what you need as a board. So we will certainly do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Toro. I apologize to all of you for being a little late here, but all of you have also traveled in Austin traffic, I'm sure. And it seems that it gets worse as the day goes on. And I thought I was never going to get here, frankly. But at any rate, thanks very much, Brenda, for launching and getting the meeting underway. I'm trying to pick up here exactly where we are now and where we're into the auditing. Now, you should understand one thing. I knew that we would be getting into auditing early. I was hung in traffic, and all I could see was Susan Warren sitting there with her clock running. So you can imagine I was indeed in a hurry. So at any rate, so we're on item number 4, which is a discussion of a statement on auditing standards number 114, auditors' communication with those charged with governance. So we'll turn the session over now to Susan. Thank you very much. Okay, Susan, go ahead.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, members. We are here today to talk about SAS 114, and I'll start with just an explanation of what that is, because it's something new to the committee for fiscal year 08. It's an auditing standard known as Auditor's Communication with those charged with governance, i.e. yourself as the AOC. It was a standard published back in 2006, but it was effective for the coordinating board's fiscal year 2008. Which is the audit that we are starting. So that's why we're here today to talk about it, and why we wouldn't have been here during the 07 audit. It was not applicable during the 07. But what SAS 114 does is it's meant to assist the committee in understanding what the auditor's responsibilities are versus management and the committee's responsibilities. It's meant to clarify those roles in this type of discussion. It's also meant to give an opportunity for the committee to have feedback into the audit process during our planning stage, which we're completing that this week. We actually start field work next week. And it's also meant for us to give you feedback on what we've seen so far, if there's anything we feel you need to know about, and your role is overseeing the financial reporting process. Mm-hmm. So that's what 114 is the importance of, and why we're here today to have that conversation. You can see on page 2, the agenda we have in front of us. We'll talk a little bit about what those responsibilities are for KPMG. Then we're required to tell you about a little audit overview, which includes things like audit scope, who your team is, what materiality means, kind of an audit process, areas of risk that we have perceived through our planning process with management to date, seeking your input from that as well to make sure our areas of understanding of risk align with yours. And then kind of talk about the item number 3 on there is what I refer to as brainstorming. It's a list of questions that I have for the committee to provide feedback for into the audit process. And then item 4 is what you're normally used to us seeing. When we finish up the audit, we always come back and report the significant findings of the audit, and I'll just give you a summary of what that is. I also have with me today Rebecca Goldstein. She's the audit manager, and she'll be helping me with this presentation. Questions on the agenda? All right, then moving to slide 3. We'll dive right in on what is our responsibilities as your external auditor under General Accepting Auditing Standards. Just to paraphrase what's here is you did hire us to help to issue an opinion on the financial statements that have been prepared by management with the oversight of the AOC in accordance with GAAP. In doing that, we plan and perform our audit for reasonable but not absolute assurance about the risk of fraud, fraud being primarily focused on the theft of assets and financial reporting. We also look at internal controls over the financial reporting process, but what we don't do is there's no opinion on controls. And you might, if you sit on a public company board or have that insight, then that's where you would see that. That's the SOX 404, Sarbanes-Oxley that everybody talks about. But in the coordinating board environment, we do look at controls, and we will issue a management letter if we see a failure or an opportunity to improve controls. We don't actually give you an opinion on controls. The opinion's on the financial statements, their fairness and presentation to GAAP. Okay. Slide 4. We also will report any significant matters that we encounter during our audit process back to the board and the committee so that you can have that information, again, to help you with your oversight of the financial reporting process. And the last two things are kind of reminders that 114 specifically says that we're supposed to remind the audit committee and management is if you choose to include the audited financial statements and any other type of deliverable, most commonly would be an annual report of some sort, it is the responsibility of the auditor to review that for consistency whenever you're going to reprint the auditor's opinion. And so we just are required to remind you of that under professional standards. And then we're also required to remind you that this 114 in an audit does not relieve management or the board of your responsibilities. That kind of put this in three little buckets of whose responsibilities are whom. Questions on responsibilities and our generally accepted auditing standards. I think everybody's really familiar with those, but the standards do require us to have an open conversation. And moving to slide 5, I will turn it over to Rebecca to talk a little bit about the audit scope.
Thank you, Susan. On slide 5, you can see it talks about KPMG's audit overview or audit scope. We have been hired to issue an opinion on the August 31st, 2008 financial statements under generally accepted auditing principles, auditing standards. And with that opinion, we will also issue a management letter, if that's applicable. And then, of course, the SAS 114 communication, which is what we are here for today, as part of our planning process under our auditing standards. If you look at page number 6, the main takeaway from this slide is that your key team members for the audit have not changed from prior years, with Susan and I being your audit partner and manager. And then, of course, you can see we do have other supplemental partners and managers playing a role in the audit process as well. If you look at page number 7, here it talks about materiality and reporting of audit differences. We consider materiality when we're determining, when we are determining the nature and the timing and the extent of our audit procedures, and when evaluating the effect of misstatements. When we consider materiality, we have to consider how the omission or the misstatement influences the economic decisions of the users. And then, of course, materiality is a matter of professional judgment. If you look at slide number 8, this slide just goes over a little bit of our audit methodology and overview of our audit process. As you can see, we start with the planning phase of the audit. We meet with the management and the board members, which is what we're doing here today. Then we move into our control evaluation, where we evaluate the design and the implementation of selected controls and also look at the operating effectiveness of those controls, the controls that are applicable to our audit process. And then that then determines the extent of our substantive procedures, which is the bulk of our test work. And then, of course, we move into the completion stage of the audit, which encompasses reporting and communication to management and the board. If you go on to the next slide, this is a more detailed process overview from the previous slide. It gives a month by month of where we are in the audit process. As you can see, in March, we did have an audit entrance conference and a planning meeting with management. This month, we're doing our IT control test work, and of course, we're doing our 114 communication. May and June will be the bulk of our test work in the field, where we do our manual control test work, we do our substantive procedures, we form our audit conclusions, and we talk about key issues with management. And then, of course, you can see in July, this is where we issue our reports, and we meet with the committee again to give our results. If you look at slide 10, this gives talks about SAS 99, which is our audit, which evaluates us and drives our audit responsibilities in relation to fraud. SAS 99 requires us to look at fraud in relation to two things, which is misappropriation of assets and fraudulent financial reporting. The things that we consider when we look at fraud in relation to those two aspects, we look at incentives and pressures, which are the day-to-day operating pressures, the business pressures within the environment. We look at things such as incentive compensation, third-party pressures, communications to the public. We also look at opportunities to commit fraud, where would be the easiest to commit and the hardest to detect. So we look at certain things, certain account balances or different classes of transactions such as estimates, allowance, things like that. We also look at ineffective controls, oversight of controls, things like that. We also look at attitudes and rationalizations, integrity, what we like to call the tone at the top. How is that as far as tone at the top, as far as management? We also look at the attitudes toward internal control of our financial reporting. And then, of course, we take into consideration any knowledge or suspected allegations of fraud. We talk with management and other key members if they have any knowledge or suspect any allegations of fraud. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Susan.
Any questions on just the logistics of how the audit flows and what it is we're doing when at this point? Then slide 11 is one of the key takeaways, if I were you, from this presentation. It's from our plan to this point where we consider to be the significant areas of focus of the audit. And so I'll walk through this, and then the next slide is actually the brainstorming slide where you can provide us input if you agree or disagree, if you'd like to expand this list. But from a significant area or estimate, obviously, and they're not in order of importance, they're all on here. Student loans and all related balances, obviously that's a pretty obvious one from completeness and existence. Or along with that is your related debt and the covenants that go with it. The federal and state grant expenditures, which is your large piece of appropriations that come through and out of here as disbursements, as Brenda was alluding to. And of course, the actual preparation of the financial statements. There are many other things that this agency does, and it's not that we won't audit those, but these are the 4 key areas where we consider the most significant risk in our audit planning process. If you move to the middle box, non-routine transactions, those are things that come up unusually during the year. It might be litigation, it might be some significant subsequent event, some new large contract or change in operations. It's things that are unusual in nature that we would need to look at just if they have a financial statement impact. So we make inquiries during the audit process to see if any of those are coming up that need to be included in the financial statements, either from a financial perspective or a disclosure perspective. And on the far right, of course, is the IT systems which overlay the entire process. Those are your general controls, which are things like physical access, program change management, batching operations, things like that. And then the application level controls, what specific edits are actually in the systems that provide good controls that we'd like to test. We primarily focus that test work, of course, on Charter Helms. There are other systems here, but the majority of our test work for the financial statement audit is focused on Charter Helms, which controls the loans. Questions on that from a perspective of where our summary of significant issues is at this point?
Susan.
Yes, ma'am.
Does this completeness, existence, and accuracy of debt, that includes our bond issues?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, moving then right into slide 12.
Well, actually,
Yes.
I mean, it includes the bond issues because we have contracted with you to provide an opinion on our financials. Is that correct? I mean, that's so you're getting the full look at everything.
It includes, right, because
Also,
they end up on the financial statements
Right.
as outstanding debt.
Because of the scope of what we've contracted them to do, and that's an important point.
Yes. Yes.
I have a quick question. Susan, is what you're looking at, is there a template that if we were any other governmental agency in the state, that there would be similar categories? I mean, for example, if you were doing the same thing for, TEA, for example, would you be looking at the same kinds of things? Or is there something unique to our agency that makes it, well, probably the student loan bonds, obviously.
Student
makes it
loans and
unique.
debt obviously are
Yeah.
unique, yes.
As I asked the question, I thought of the answer.
Yeah, because TA doesn't have that, but
Right.
okay.
But, I mean, is that similar in scope and in depth to other agencies that would have you all looking at it?
It depends. Obviously, TA has appropriations and grant expenditures like you do. So yes, those would be very similar processes. And I actually happen to do some work at TEA, so I'm familiar with their financial statements. And those are significant streams. Significance can be based on volume, like the number of, even if it's small transactions, a lot of little things being processed, or it could be, several very large dollars that add up to a big number. Significance is defined from different perspectives. And in that process, we also look at internal controls. Is it something that's governed by a system, or has it got manual and estimates involved? Because system controls obviously kind of mitigate some of the human error possibilities versus others. So I can't say there's a template per se that we go into every agency and say these are the 4 things we're going to go audit. No, what we generally do is start with the financial statements and look for what we refer to as the significant accounts. We talk to management and understand what the mission and the objectives are, what your programs are, where it is that you're focused, the areas of focus. And then we also we ask management, what do you think the areas of risk are? Where are the estimates in these financial statements? Where are the non-routine transactions in these financial statements? And that drives the completion of this slide. So it is not the same from agency to agency.
Thank you. I was just curious.
Are we still on other planning matters to consider?
Well, I think I started to go to 12, but we went back to 11. So,
Okay.
We'll jump to 12 because it's kind of all a segue into 12. So we're on
Okay.
slide 12 now.
Okay.
The standards kind of suggest some questions for me to kind of lead the conversation with. So that's what these are. And so we'll just lead with, one of the things they specifically ask us to do is to verify with the governing body if the people we have listed on this slide are who you would like us to coordinate our day-to-day activities with from an audit perspective. Obviously, the list is long because of the various look of the agency, but we've got Tony, Dr. Alonzo, Dan, Susan, and Darla, which incorporates your accounting process, your internal audit, and your IT systems. And we do work with all those individuals. And I just need your verification that is still how you would like us to proceed.
I have a question. Can we have Tony Tegby come up here as well? Because I think he
Sure.
needs to help answer some of these questions on the
Sure.
board's behalf.
I have some comments to make about this when we get
Okay.
beyond this segment right here.
It's a little difficult when the question is, we're going to ask the governing body to give us precise and correct answers to certain questions.
Understand.
I mean, because we're relying on the auditors to give us those answers. So, what I would say is ultimately the commissioner is responsible. So, so do you integrate the commissioner's name into this question? And number 2, I'd like to hear from Tony if any of the names are missing. But again, in terms of where the burden is placed here, I mean, I don't think I'm a little uncomfortable with it being placed solely on the board members. Can we talk about that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
In our planning discussion with management, these were the names that management recommended. So it's not, I would say it's not solely placed on the committee. It's more of input from your perspective if you think that there's somebody missing from the list or somebody you would like to lead the process. For instance, Tony leads the process.
Yeah, again, from my standpoint, I think that Dr. Alonzo and Mr. Tegby should answer these questions because, I'm a board member. I'm not involved in the daily operations of this agency. I mean, I can look at an org chart and I can give you what I think is a good answer, but I don't think the best answer will come solely from us. I think it needs to be a team effort here. Okay.
From my perspective, I think this is the correct
Okay.
list.
And what about integrating the commissioner's name in here? Is that appropriate or not appropriate? I don't know. I'm just asking.
I don't know. It's certainly all right with me.
And just to
Isn't
let
he
you know,
ultimately the one who signs
I
the
do talk
report,
to the commissioner, and I do interview him for SAS 99, and he is involved in the process, and he does sign the actual representation letters and things like that. So yes, he
Well,
is
that's what I
involved.
thought. I mean, if
He
he's
is.
signing the representation letter, then he's...
Yes.
So it certainly would be appropriate then to have him included in the list then.
I think it's a good idea to include his name on the list. Yeah, he is involved in the auditing process, so we need to include his name.
You're
We will add his
comfortable
name.
with this
Yes,
list to start
yeah,
with? Okay.
you'll be good.
Well, I'd like to take a minute and go one step further. One of the things that we're going to do, Susan, and I will bring it up right now, we've been talking with Brenda about taking a larger role in her activities on the board. And one of the things that we've asked her to do, and we've discussed it at some length, is to create an ad hoc committee that would work with the board and with all the staff and so forth, and pay a lot of attention, in particular, to the audit process and how it's all working and the scope and a variety of things. And I'm sure that Brenda will talk with all of you about that later, but I'm not jumping the gun. I've already touched all the bases on this, so this is not anything new, and it's new, but it's not anything that's just coming up just today by accident. It's been worked on for some time. So having that in mind, I think it would be appropriate to have Brenda's name in there somewhere as a contact point, even though she resisted.
I respectfully disagree.
Yeah, you should have said that yesterday.
I think I mean from the management list, but
Right.
certainly the contact point from the ad hoc
Right.
standpoint, absolutely.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So we want everybody to know about that. So Brenda will be taking a ever-increasing role in some of this activity. Yes.
And my question is should Bill France be included as well? One of the critical pieces of our team effort at the agency is knowing and having a comfort level that we have an attorney that's overseeing whether it's the things that are being done correctly or whether it's even things that are not being done correctly. It seems to me that would be a point person. But
He is involved. We do talk to him, and he does reply to the attorney's letter. This list is meant to be a short list of your management team.
Okay.
I mean, I could have put the whole
we could
org
keep
chart in
going.
here. Pretty much everybody in your management team is involved in the audit process, so let me just make sure that's clear to everybody.
Okay.
This is meant to be, if I have a legal problem, I start with Tony. Tony and Dan and I Bill and I get together and we discuss it. But you got to have somebody in the agency or two somebodies in the agency who are points that know exactly what's going on in the audit process at any one point in time to make it effective. So yes, they are involved and have all already been involved and will continue to be involved.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Then we'll
How
move
about-
to question number 2.
Okay.
This question is meant to focus on, as we talked about up front, the responsibilities between management and the audit in the AOC. Obviously, we've got your charter. We look at that. We understand whose roles are what and what you've delegated down to management. But the standard does actually suggest that we inquire of the board if there's been any changes to that that we would need to be aware of in the roles and responsibilities of management versus the AOC.
I think just the ad hoc committee that Chairman talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, Bill.
Recently, and I don't remember which board meeting it was at, this committee approved, as I recall, certain rules and the distinction between what staff would do versus what the board members would do. And indeed, we've gone through that process for every committee, and I think particularly at this meeting, we finalized P&S's distinction between roles. And so I will make that available to Tony Tan, to Susan Warren, which will give her a real good and current basis for analyzing.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, Bill.
All right, the third bullet, any particular matters, keeping in mind our discussion on the previous slide, but any particular matters that the AOC has that you would consider that would warrant additional particular attention, in other words, other significant areas of risk outside of student loans, debt, grants, and financial reporting we've already talked about, that you would like to discuss to make sure we've included, taken into account in our audit process and our planning.
Yes, Brenda, go ahead.
I just have 2 questions. I'm just curious, no particular reason why I'm asking this question, but do you look at anything related to the controls of disaster recovery?
We brief inquiries through our ITGCs, but we do not look in detail in that. No, we do not.
Okay, and I'm asking that question from an internal audit planning standpoint. Okay, that's good to know. And then, is there anything that you've seen from recent internal audit and state auditor reports that would warrant particular attention during your audit?
Not that's not already included.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Do you look at any federal regulations that might affect our bond issues?
We do have a tax individual, Deborah Cook, on our organization chart, who her specialty is exempt organizations and government entities. One of the things she does look at is a tax exempt debt to make sure there's not some obvious violation of federal regulations. Now, we don't give you an opinion on any of that. We don't get into the level of details for, say, like a lawyer or a consulting review would, but we do look at a very high level to make sure that there's nothing that we're aware of that would have a direct impact to the financial statements, i.e. a calling of the debt, moving it from long-term to current, or required footnote disclosures saying that there's been a violation.
And so if there were a violation that was occasioned by some arcane federal regulation, we just don't know about it until we violate it.
I would not know about it. That's not part of our audit process.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that's more in the legal department, would you say?
Legal or somebody else, but it's not part of the external audit.
Not me. Okay, thank you.
Other thoughts on that? Okay. The next one is any significant communication with the regulators that you're aware of. Usually that's going to be Department of Ed or the IRS. But any significant matters that you're having to address as a board or the AOC that could potentially have financial impact that we would need to be aware of.
No, but I have a question. The questions that you're asking us, do you also ask these questions to the full board? Okay.
No, I'm sorry. I ask them to management, and then I'm asking them to the AOC. We don't generally take them to the full board. We have, well, obviously this is the first year we're doing this. It's first year it's required, so we were planning just to bring it to the committee.
Okay.
Okay.
So I guess the answer to the question is no. No Department of Ed, no IRS,
Yeah.
nothing of this nature.
No.
Is Susan aware of the recently resolved unpleasantness, or does she need to be, Bill?
She's aware of it.
Okay,
It was an issue last
Yes,
August.
okay,
I am.
all right.
All right. The next question for the AOC is, again, and as Rebecca was mentioning on the fraud slide for SAS 99, focusing on financial reporting and the misuse of assets. Does the AOC have a particular perspective of any concerns over the misuse of assets or financial reporting from a fraud perspective where you believe there's potential hole in internal controls that would make you more vulnerable that we would need to be aware of?
Well, you've already asked me that question once.
I have.
And the answer is no, and it's still no, as far
Okay.
as I'm concerned. Now, I don't know what the other members here might have on their mind.
And I have asked these questions to the management too, and the answer was no, just so you'll know. But again, the standards do require us to ask multiple times.
Right.
So I'll take no.
No is the answer.
No is the answer. And the last one is really kind of just a caveat, instead of just saying any other or anything like that, or just anything else that you can think of from a new development or consideration perspective in your role as the AOC that could have potential impact, not just to the numbers. Financial statements also have disclosures in the footnotes about major changes in operations or subsequent events that ultimately might affect the numbers, but anything of that nature that we would need to be aware of.
I know of nothing. Anybody else? Guess the answer is no
All right,
again.
thank you. And that takes us to
Let me
okay.
just ask a question before it's a final no.
Okay.
I'm looking across the room at the Texas Apply, the new license plate, and there could possibly be new money in a new way flowing through. And, it's different. It's something that we haven't done before. There could be a whole lot of money that's changing hands in different ways, and I just thought I'd bring that up.
Okay, we'll make a note of that and follow up with management.
That's a good thought, Lori.
Well, it was staring me in the
I
face.
see.
And I believe that'll bring us to our last slide, slide 13. This is just a summary. Historically, we've always come back at the end of the audit and presented results. This is just a summary to let you know we will still do that. SAS 114 didn't change that. It just added this part on the front end. So at the end of the engagement, we will come back and present the results of the audit. And those things we talk about are, just changes in significant accounting practices, new implementations of new GASBs if there were any, which we're not planning on at this point, any changes in the way the estimates are done. And of course, if we have any of these other things, we tell you about them. Historically, they've all been no. But if we had any difficulties disagreements with management, consultation with other auditors, we are required to disclose those with you. We also talk about if there were any misstatements or adjustments to the financial statements, and of course, we always present the management letter if there is one, if that's applicable. So that presentation will be the same and is scheduled for July. That's the end of our prepared remarks. Any other comments or questions or additions for us?
Okay, I guess if there are no other questions or comments, we'll move on. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it very much.
Susan.
Thank you.
So
Rebecca.
much, appreciate it.
Okay. It's to do with you here on facilities update. Right. Okay, the next item that we're going to deal with has to do with item C, and that's under Deputy Commissioner's Report, under Roman numeral 3. And so I'd like to call on Arturo to introduce the topics for this meeting report, and he'll give us some background information, introduce the presenter. This item requires no action, but it has to do with facilities update.
Right, I skipped over that inadvertently. Your chair, board chair had asked me after our last conference call to briefly update the AOC on where we are with the lease on our facilities. As I think all of you have heard before, that lease is set to expire in June of 2010, a little bit over a year from now. We started work on this full 2 years in advance of the lease expiration. Last summer, we started meeting with the Texas Facilities Commission. We started getting the information or finding out what information we needed to get to them. We've been working with the Facilities Commission because they, by statute, they are the only ones that can enter into a lease on our behalf, as they do for all state agencies, or at least for most state agencies. And at this point, we have submitted all our specs. We have submitted our requirements, taking into consideration that there may be a need to move to another building. We've submitted all that information to them. The Texas Facilities Commission has indicated that they are going to let this contract out to what they call a TexMOS, which is a third-party contractor to work with them and with us. This is a company that specializes in real estate and in leases and so forth. And so we welcome that because they have the expertise and they get paid by the eventual successful bidder. So we are well on our way. As we get more information, we will keep the AOC apprised as to what we but Whit just wanted me to make sure that the AOC had the latest. And so we think that we are going to be meeting with the Facilities Commission and the third-party vendor as early as next week to actually start looking at, I hope, potential space. So be glad to answer any questions.
Just out of curiosity, I wasn't here when we moved into this space, nor were you for that matter, but is there some consideration about proximity to the Capitol and other key agencies?
Sure, and we've communicated that to the Facilities Commission and subsequently to the third party through to the Facilities Commission that is a consideration. And so we've mapped out a general area of where we would like to look at, considering the fact that the closer we are to the Capitol, the better it is, but also considering the fact that space downtown is very, very expensive. Even in the tough economic times, we got a report about 2 weeks ago where space in the suburbs, the vacancy rate has gone up and the rates have gone down, but that is not holding true for what they call the central business district, unfortunately. And so that obviously is going to have to be a consideration. As you remember, or you may not remember, but in our LAR, we asked the legislature for two special line items, one special line item to consider funding us for, number one, the cost of the move if we have to move, and number two, for an increase of the base budget that we have now for facilities. Neither that line item made it neither the House nor the Senate version of the bill. So but it's not dead yet. It got kicked over to Article 12. So we'll see what the final. It's going to conference committee now. We'll see what they come up with. But if they don't, we'll just have to work around that. That certainly is a consideration. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, next item on the agenda is a consideration of approval of internal audit reports. Tony Tigby will present 4 audit reports, and these reports are Be On Time program, data security at TAMU's Educational Resource Center, enrollment data at Houston Community College, and financial aid at Southwestern University. These reports are sent to you under separate cover by Tony, and if the committee desires, and we make the motion to go forward with all of these after the last one is presented. Tony, ball's in your court.
Yeah. Oh, I am not on time clock. Do you want the bond? I did
Great, Tony. He's saving us money all the time. He says we want the bond guy to go.
Do you want them to come on? I'll wait.
Well,
Yeah.
these bond guys from up in Bosque County, they have a little tough time. It doesn't hurt for them to make up for it.
So if you don't mind, I will wait for them, sir.
No, would you like to have it that way? We'll do it that way.
Yes, I mean, let's
Are
see.
you ready to go?
Yeah, let's save some money.
Okay, very good.
So I'll wait for them.
That's right. Save money every time you can.
Tony, I think Mr. Hinton was trying to stimulate the economy, though. Stimulus funds here.
I think so too.
Yeah. Okay.
You want to go to the left and then,
Where are we now?
this one.
Is this Donner? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so this is, we're moving now to agenda item 5B, in consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the elimination of the reserve portion of the interest and sinking fund for college student loan bonds, prescribing the administration of the Texas Opportunity Plan Fund and authorization of investment for monies therein, authorizing certain transfers of money to the Texas Opportunity Plan Fund and the Student Loan Auxiliary Fund, and the resolving of other matters related to this subject. So Dan Weaver and Patrick Krischer, Tim Didoff, Vincent Elkins, Lee Donner, First Southwest Company are here to present on this item. So you guys are ready to go. Well, we'll take it in the order that I read them off then. Tim, do you want to start? You were first on this list.
I'd be happy to. Just to give kind of a historical background here, the board has what's called the Interest and Sinking Fund. That's established in the state treasury, and that's the fund that all of your student loan repayments must go into by statute and by contract pursuant to your outstanding bond resolution. Before the last regular session in 2007, your statute required to maintain within that interest and sinking fund a reserve, and that reserve was equal to average annual debt service on all your outstanding bonds. In 1997, your bond counsel and staff at that time started reserving the right in your bond resolutions to get rid of that reserve in the future if it was ever permitted by law, and you got a confirmation from your rating agencies that the elimination of that reserve wouldn't affect your outstanding bond rating. Well, the time has come. Since 1997, the board has paid off many of its outstanding bonds that had that restrictive covenant in it. And there's one more series of bonds that's outstanding that still has that requirement to maintain that reserve within your interest and sinking fund. Those are your 1990 bonds. Those will be paid off in August the 1st of this year. And last session in 2007, you obtained a change in your act that governs the provisions of your bond and loan program to authorize you to get rid of that reserve. Staff has determined that it no longer needs that reserve. I think it's to the tune of $44 million. And this resolution that's put before you authorizes staff to eliminate that reserve portion of the INS fund, which is contingent upon first paying off those Series 1990 bonds, and two, receiving a rating confirmation from the rating agencies on your bonds that the removal of that reserve won't adversely affect your ratings. This resolution also addresses what happens to that INS fund reserve monies once it's eliminated. By statute and by your outstanding bond covenants, that excess flows down into your loan funds and can only be used to make additional student loans, fund operating expenses of your loan program, or for any other lawful purpose related to the loan program. Also, this resolution authorizes the administration of the Texas Opportunity Plan Fund, which is one of your loan funds that I've referred to. When your Series 1990 bonds are finally paid off on August the 1st, you will no longer have an outstanding bond resolution that governs how that Texas Opportunity Plan Fund, or TOP Fund, is administered. This resolution provides that monies that come in from loans that were originally made from the TOP Fund still have to go into your interest and sinking fund to pay debt service on the bonds, but it essentially authorizes any excess loan repayments that come in off of those TOP Fund loans to flow back into the TOP Fund, and it prescribes the permitted uses of monies in this TOP Fund, which will now match up with your other loan fund, your Student Loan Auxiliary Fund, which is what is being used for your new bond issues.
Very nice.
Starts to get a little complicated, but essentially what the main, I think, provision of this resolution is to authorize the elimination of the reserve portion of the interest and sinking fund.
That's the part that I understood. You lost me after that. There's a lot of toing and froing of the movement of money here, it seems to me like. Dan, do we have somebody, can you, somebody here in our staff keep up with all this?
Sure, we keep up.
Because there are a lot of limitations on what you can do with it, and we want to make sure we do it properly.
Actually, the limitations now are worse than what they're going to be in August. This actually allows us to use the money more efficiently, and I think Lee Donner probably can talk to some of the specifics around kind of the negatives of having the money in the average annual reserve and what it's going to allow us to do in the future. So I always try to defer to the experts at the table. So Lee, this is probably a good time for you to make some comments on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brief summary of some history and how we got here. The current structure of the interest and sinking fund emanates from the very early days of your student loan program and the bond issues that were done then. It was made very, very large. You funded the entire next year's debt service at the beginning of the year, and then on top of that put in this reserve component equal to your average annual debt service looking out in the future. That was done back then because it was very difficult at that time to predict how these loans would perform, how soon they would leave school, begin to amortize, and generate a payment stream that was going to be sufficient to handle the debt service on the bonds. It made sense in that environment. But as the years passed and your revenue stream was more predictable and broader, it just got left in there, and we arrived at a point where you had a reserve fund that was heavily overfunded, way beyond prudence. That has negative consequences for you. And by the way, I'd like to emphasize, this has been a 12-year effort to get rid of this. It started because it was in all of these bond resolutions. You had to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, when all these that have already been done are gone, then we can do this if we have legislation. So you've been preparing for August 2009 for 12 years. What this would, here are a couple of the major problems with having that big of a reserve, and I call the whole thing really a reserve. It's called the INS fund and the reserve portion, but the whole fund constitutes a reserve. First of all, the money in that reserve portion has the most restrictive investment covenants that you have. It can only be invested in governments, period. Your average cost of funds right now is somewhere around 5%. That $40 million, $40+ million is being invested in governments. And I don't know if you've looked at the return on U.S. governments lately, but you've got 300 to 400 basis points of negative arbitrage on that money. By eliminating that, you can move that money out of that restrictive reserve fund into the somewhat more liberal investment that you can make in the auxiliary fund and the TOP fund. Secondly, as Tim pointed out, you can now use that money to make loans. That reduces your need to issue additional debt. The existence of that reserve fund has caused you to issue more debt than you really needed to, because you had this large chunk of money sitting there at a negative yield that you could have been putting in student loans that would produce a positive yield. So from an economic perspective, this is all positive, and I have tried to think of a single negative to eliminating the reserve fund. I can't think of one. I'm quite confident, even in these difficult times and with the pressure that the rating agencies have been under, that they will give a rating confirmation for the elimination of the reserve portion, because you have such a large fund balance, positive fund balance, excess of assets over liabilities. You're funding your entire next year's debt service on the first day of the fiscal year, and your revenue stream off your loans is quite reasonably predictable given the scope of the program. So I'm confident they'll give the requisite rating confirmation, and we recommend, from an economic perspective as your financial advisor, you pass the resolution.
Anybody have any comments or questions? Bob?
Mr. Chairman, this is not the first time we've had this conversation, as you well know. And I think those who've been around for a while have been waiting for this day, because depending on what happens with a lot of our loan programs, this is a way to go find some additional resources to be able to put back into our loan program. So, Lee, it's finally coming. And
Yeah.
Tim?
Well, my question was not directed toward being unhappy with what's happening here. I think this is great. If we can get $44 million back into the system working for us, that's great. I just want to keep track of it every step of the way as it moves through the system.
Actually, as Dan indicated, and I concur, although it sounded complex in terms of the resolution specifying where this money would go, eliminating the reserve fund on an overall basis simplifies the management of the funds. You've eliminated one step, one diversion of these funds before they get where they need to be.
Right. Yeah.
Okay? Bob, you had
I'm just out of curiosity, if we're losing 400 basis points a year in negative yield, where was the fund balance 12 years ago before we started losing? Have we been losing that much every year for 12 years?
You're losing that much on that reserve portion.
Right.
But your program has grown over the years, so the reserve fund portion has grown also. Secondly, whereas you have this leakage there and there was nothing you could do about it, it was embedded in the law and in your resolutions, you had sufficient spread in other areas, sufficient spread between your loans and your overall cost of money, that you've been able to offset it and overcome it. The net result has been positive growth in your net fund balance. The existence of the reserve component here has prevented your fund balance from being as large as it otherwise would have been.
And I guess 2 years ago, the interest rate we were getting from the comptroller was 5 1/4, and we were making loans at 6. So the impact of this a couple of years ago wasn't as great. Mm-hmm. It's much more significant now than it was 2 years ago.
Exactly.
Thank you.
any other questions, comments? Okay, so I guess we're ready to vote on it. So, do I have a motion to go forward with the recommendations being made?
So moved.
By Bob. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Bob Shepherd. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Great. Okay. Now, on item C, that's the next one on my schedule, our next item is consideration of adopting a resolution relating to the issuance of State of Texas college student loan bonds in one or more series, and delegating to the commissioners the authority for the filing of one or more applications to obtain a portion of the state's allocation for private activity bonds. And again, we still have the same team up front that will be discussing this. So once again, you're at the front of the line, Tim.
Yes, sir. This resolution I refer to as a standard resolution in that you've adopted this same resolution for in very similar form in the past few years. You issue your bonds on a tax-exempt basis, meaning that the interest that the bondholders receive on your bonds is exempt from federal taxes. In order to get that exemption, you have to obtain a private activity bond reservation from the Texas Bond Review Board because your bonds under the federal tax code are private activity bonds. And so by getting that reservation, that gives you the ability to issue tax-exempt debt. This resolution before you authorizes staff to make one or more applications to the Texas Bond Review Board to obtain a reservation for that private activity bond allocation.
Any other comments? Lee, you, Dan, anybody? Questions by any of the members?
I move approval, Mr.
Okay, a move by Bob to approve. Have a second? Bob Shepherd, excuse me. We got two Bobs. Second? Second, okay. By Brenda, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Now, we got to go back to Tony. Dan?
Can I, Mr. Chair, can I
Yeah.
just real quickly interject
Sure.
one point? Since we haven't met since January and there was some federal legislation that's passed, it's been beneficial for the coordinating board and our future bond issues. And just to beg your indulgence for just a second, if Lee could kind of talk through the AMT we've gotten a holiday from the AMT for the next 2 years that's going to be beneficial for the coordinating board and our future bond issues. If you would just give us 45 seconds.
I'll make it very brief. Your bonds, as Tim indicated, have been subject to the alternative minimum tax ever since the passage of the 87 Tax Reform Act. Year by year by year, the impact of the alternative minimum tax has become more and more adverse. More and more investors have become subject or potentially subject to that tax. And as a result, the investor universe for bonds subject to the alternative minimum tax has shrunk. As it has shrunk, the interest rate on those bonds has gone up. It has developed what we refer to as the AMT premium. An AMT bond, a bond subject to the AMT tax, carries a higher interest rate than a non-AMT bond as a result of that provision. The stimulus bill passed by the federal government a month or so ago contained a provision that everyone was shocked to see get in. And what it is, it exempted all private activity bonds, student loans, airports, all housing, all private activity bonds issued in 2009 and 2010 will be exempted from the alternative minimum tax. The result is, and we saw, by the way, at toward the latter part of 2008, the AMT premium get as high as 120 to 140 basis points, 1.2 to 1.4% additional interest cost for an AMT bond. That's how severe it got. So we expect that the bonds you issue this year in 2009 and the bonds you issue in 2010 will enjoy a significantly lower interest rate than they otherwise would have. Don't ask me yet how much impact that's going to be. We'll have to wait until we get a little bit closer to your bond issue rolling out here in June. But it should be a very, very noticeable savings. The most important part is that it will open up the universe of buyers that will that your underwriters will be able to take this product to. It'll improve competition and your interest rate will come down. So it's some real good news for you and your student loan borrowers.
Mr. Chairman, can you indulge me for just 30 seconds? Since we're, and then this is related, because Whit did ask me to keep you posted. For the upcoming bond sale that Lee just mentioned, which we expect to close sometime around the first week of July, we have selected the underwriting team because it is going to be a negotiated sale, and we have announced this and want to keep you posted up to date on that. The senior manager will be Wachovia Wells Fargo. I don't know who's first, but it's Wachovia/Wells Fargo. They're in the process of merging. And the co-managers will be RBC Capital Markets, Edward Jones, and Morgan Keegan as co-managers. So they have been notified. They are excited to get to work for us, and we look for some good deals.
And they committed to a gross underwriter's discount of $3.95 a bond, which is excellent.
Good.
For serial and term bond issue.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good report, Toro.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, are we
Go back to Tony.
We go back to Tony now? Oh, there you go. Okay, Anthony. Go back and refresh memories. We're going to do the Be On Time loan program.
Yes, sir.
Data security of TAMU's Educational Resource Center, enrollment data at Houston Community College, and the financial aid of Southwestern University.
Yes,
And
sir.
if all that goes smooth, we'll vote on all of them at once. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Good. Floor is yours.
Yeah, the first internal report is on the Be On Time loan program. We have provided you with the audit reports. So I'm not going to waste much of your time. Our conclusion was that the coordinating board accomplished the purpose of the Be On Time loan program by providing no interest loans totaling $33,744,679 to 6,930 eligible students in fiscal year 2008 to enable those students to attend public and private or independent institutions of higher education in Texas. 1,908 students who made the loan forgiveness requirements had their loans totaling $18,255,719 forgiven in fiscal year 2008. However, we noticed some areas of opportunities where the program could be improved. The first area is that the coordinating board need to set some operating guidelines for the institutions to use in calculating the amount of the set aside. Also, we need to be able to calculate the amount of the tuitions set aside from the institution independently, and then we can compare what the institution send out to the Treasury with our own calculations. Then we need to put in some programming monitoring measures over the Be On Time program in order to ensure the compliance with the established rules and regulations. And the most important observation was that there was a tuition set aside totaling $627,594.24 that the University of Texas at Panam did not send to the coordinating board in fiscal year 2008. And I'm happy to report to you that when we provided the report to the management, they have been able to contact the institution, and they have paid that amount to the state controller, and not only that, they even paid a part of $327,000 as part of their contribution towards FY09. And the management has been implementing the audit recommendations. So we will do a follow-up in about 6 months.
Tony, clarify something for me. On the total amount of money that's coming back, how much was that?
The amount that was coming back as a result of the audit was 627,000.
And we have check in hand for that now, or is it in the mail?
No, it has been deposited at the controller's
Going to the
office.
state treasury.
Okay.
And we have received verification for that.
Yes,
And the check cleared?
yes, it is clear.
Good. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. Then our setup, a second item is the review of the data security of the Education Research Center at the Texas A&M University. We concluded that the center has established some reasonable, logical, and physical security controls to adequately protect confidential student data aside from unauthorized access and disclosure. So we made a recommendation that we should release the student data to the ERC, to the Educational Research Center. The report you having is just an abbreviated version of the all detailed report due to the sensitivity of the report. We did not make it available to everybody. That is that one. If there's no question, we can go to the third report, which is the review of contact hours at the Houston Community College. The Houston Community College took a proactive approach after the audit that was done about 2 years ago, which resulted in them paying us $109,000 back as a result of over-reporting of contact hours. They did a self-assessment and asked us to review that assessment. We perform a sample of 30 classes. And we found that out of 14 classes, we found that 14 classes, or 47% of our sample, contained some discrepancy, and 11 or 79% of the 14 indicated under-reported hours, and 3 classes were over-reported. So we reached a conclusion that the Houston Community College had not accurately reported its contact hours to the coordinating board, and this is most likely going to have resulted in some inaccurate funding for the institution. So,
okay.
If there is no question, the last report is the audit of the financial aid at Southwestern University. This audit was a follow-up of the audit by the external auditor of the university, wherein they reported a material non-compliance and control the deficiency in the financial aid program. We did a small sample of 80 students, and we concluded that the institution actually owed us $97,144. We have contacted the institution, and I think as at yesterday, they already paid the sum of $97,144 to the Treasury. So we got that money back. That is all.
That's it, Tony?
Yes, sir.
Any comments, discussion, questions from any of the members? If not, then we'll move forward. Do we have a motion to go forward?
I move approval.
Okay, by Bob Shepherd.
Second.
Second by Brenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much, Tony. Good job. Okay, so the next item is an extension of a contract for a total amount not to exceed $200,000 with Lone Star Delivery and Process. I have to plead ignorance here. What is Lone Star Delivery and Process?
That is the firm that serves our lawsuits
Oh,
to delinquent borrowers.
oh, okay.
And I'll present that one, Mr.
Yeah,
Hinton.
right, that's your,
Actually, this is a reporting item for the board, and it's a good news story. We had issued a contract of $100,000 to this firm, Lone Star Delivery and Process Servers, to file suit on our behalf. About halfway through the year, they had increased their volume tremendously, and because of different reasons, one being that our staff has been more catching up and more diligent in getting that information to them. And so we were about to go over that amount that is delegated to us. And so I went to the board chair and vice chair under the current rules that call for board chair and vice chair under the emergency provisions to approve an extension of that contract, which they did. I simply bring this as part of our commitment to the AOC of full transparency and accountability for your information. There is no need for you to take a vote on this, but I want to let you know that that it was approved by the chair and the vice chair.
okay. Okay, the next item is C, consideration of adopting resolution relating to the issuance of state of Texas loans. Did we cover that already? We've already done that.
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah. Okay, so I just didn't check it off. Okay. So then we come down to item D, that's agenda item 5D. That was withdrawn from the agenda.
That's right.
Okay. Next item is 5E, in consideration of adopting the staff recommendation relating to the allocation of unused fiscal year '09 Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education State Leadership and Basic Grant Funds for use in program year 2008 and 9. Susan Hussler is here to present on this item. So, Susan?
Thank you, Mr. Hinton. Good afternoon, committee members, Dr. Alonso. Mr. Hinton, this agenda item has two parts.
Okay.
Do you wish to do them together as one motion and vote, or would you like to do them separately?
Is there any legal reason why we can't do that? Both in one motion? Is that okay, Bill? Okay, that's what we'll do.
Okay. Part one of this agenda item provides you with some background information about the Workforce Education Course Manual WACM Maintenance Project that the board awarded to Midland College in July 2008 in the amount of $100,000 for use in the 2008-2009 program year. At its January 2009 meeting, the board approved the reallocation of unused 2007-2008 carryover funds and the unobligated 2008-2009 funds for use in the current program year. A portion of the unobligated 2008-2009 state leadership funds was set aside in anticipation of a request for funding to support additional WECM course review workshops during May and June of 2009. This request would amend the original 2008-2009 WECM project. The amendment adds 3 additional workshops consisting of 17 teams. The amount to be awarded for these additional workshops is $45,580. This amount is a portion of those unused, unobligated funds that the board approved in July 2008 and set aside in January 2009 for this purpose. Part 2 of this agenda item provides background information about the reallocation of 2007-2008 carryover funds for use in the 2008-2009 program year. The reallocation to Texarkana College in the amount of $66,372 was inadvertently left off the list. However, this amount was included in the total that was approved by the Agency Operations Committee and by the board at their January 2009 meetings. Coordinating board staff recommends approval.
Okay. Well, everybody left. There's no.
Right. We don't have a quorum.
Yeah.
So we have to wait for a quorum.
Okay.
Before a vote
Well, we
can
take
be
about a
taken.
5 or 10 minute break then. I'm sure everybody could use it. Since we don't have a quorum yet, we'll vote on it as soon as I get back. Okay? Very good. Are you gonna make it better, Jim? Yeah, I'm gonna try to pay attention.
Must have been. Mine's so short. I haven't
Good. Very good, thank you. Except up late, I never can beat I started a day ahead of time.
Yeah, it's a strange person.
¿Qué pasó? What's up, buddy?
And you got it wrong.
Okay, because Wingo and I
You won that? You robbed those people, didn't you? So what are you going to do? You're going to give the tickets to Richard and me?
Yeah.
Was she playing? I thought you were playing with Carla. Is that right?
So I'm hoping you take
So I am being helpful, okay.
Very, very.
I'll try to be, as much as I can.
Agency. I mean, academics has been made the first thing on the board agenda, which is good because the institutions can leave.
For your meetings, you know.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. It's because we're thinking of, we're moving to thinking like that. They can leave.
Yeah, okay.
And I wasn't sure if you wanted the address for
Sal 2 L's or 1? I'm sorry? Sal, is that 2 L's?
it's 1 L.
It is for cellular?
I can text it. But then I wasn't sure if you wanted to have your personal address or anything like that.
No, that's perfect.
And your cell phone.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Yeah.
Did you want your email address add to that? Or?
Oh, yes. Thank you. And I don't need very long, you know, people, I really don't need to, legislator, and, you know, I gave him my card, and I thought, 2 weeks from now, he may not remember and associate this person, so they pay it back or something.
Well, they usually come packages of 500.
No, can you just give me like a
So that I can try.
Really don't.
I'll try.
Don't you get them printed from the state printing?
Yes, but I think we have like we order them, and the business cards they come in 500 in packages, 500 or 1,000.
We have a board member who feels very strongly about this. She only wants 100.
Oh yeah, we have. We've asked before, but I think they're only $14. They're yeah, they're not bad.
Oh, my goodness. We just had like 50, actually.
Well, I've got 100 million. You can take mine across my email.
Ready to get out of here? Yeah, I'm ready to go. Go to the dining hall.
I'm so sorry. I didn't think I'd mess up your form.
I'm sorry?
I didn't think I'd mess up their form when I went to the bathroom.
All right, you gave us the rest of us a chance to go too.
Okay.
And they're really showing
Well, we have to talk and we, I got to look up here and let's get you started on your new project. Is that okay?
Am I getting paid for that or no?
You get paid the same thing I am.
You know what that means.
Okay. We got a quorum here now? Yes. We do indeed. Okay. Susan, you just made your presentation, so we're now down to the point that we can go ahead and vote on it. And do we have a move to approve?
So moved.
Bob has moved his second
Second.
by Brenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you very much. Okay, Chris, you're next up?
Yes.
Okay, this is agenda item 5F in consideration of requests for qualifications, requests for proposals, or similar requests for the purchase of service as follows. Chris will tell you what follows.
Okay.
Okay?
We're requesting authority to release a request for applications for the Minority Health Research and Education Grant Program. And as the program title suggests, the board currently funds projects that promote participation and success of students from underrepresented groups in health careers and health degree programs. The RFAs would seek proposals for similar types of projects in the next biennium. In this current biennium, the board funded 9 grants totaling $2.5 million. Individual grants ranged from $170,000 to $340,000.
Okay.
I can move on to the next one if
Yes,
you'd like.
ma'am.
We're asking for authority to release an RFA for the Nursing, Allied Health, and Other Health-Related Education Grant Program. As the program title doesn't suggest, the board is only funding projects in nursing. Separate state legislation directed that these funds be used exclusively for nursing education through 2011. The program currently supports projects that promote education, hospital partnerships to increase the number of nursing graduates. In this current biennium, the board funded 13 grants totaling $4.2 million. Individual grants range from about $66,000 to about $1.3 million. That concludes my portion
Okay,
of
so
items
you've
F.
got 2 that we would like to couple together here as we vote. Is that correct, Bill?
You may do that, sir.
I said, we just got a presentation to go forward with two items that Chris had just given us. And then once again, I want to make sure we're correct if we couple those together and vote as one.
Couple those if you'd like.
Okay,
As long as the full presentation on both has
okay.
been made.
Yes.
Do any of the members have any questions or comments before we put it to a vote? Okay, then do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Brenda, seconded by Bob Wingo. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Very good. Thank you very much, Chris. Let's see. The next item. Go ahead.
Oh, no, they're cutting up over there.
Oh, I know. The next item is a request for staff regarding a request for application for P16 regional councils. This item will be presented by Dr. Murray. How do I pronounce that?
Live a day.
Labor Day, okay?
Live a day, like live a day at a time.
Very good. Live one more day. Okay.
I want to say that I believe, I'm new as of January, beginning of January, and my understanding is that because these contracts, none of these contracts will be owed to any of the individuals over $100,000. that you really don't have to approve this, but it's nice for you to know that we are about to do these RFAs and continue with our relationship with the P16 councils that are doing great work out there and closing the gaps. So,
No, if they exceed $100,000, they do have to approve this.
yeah, but none of those contracts will exceed.
Oh, they do not.
They do not. None of the contracts. In fact, their grants, if you look in the third paragraph, grants up to $50,000.
Well, I was going to ask, what's the total amount of money?
This year, we'll have to see. This past year, it was $827,000. But this year, we'll have to see how many people and.
But I believe because the total amount exceeds $100,000, the AOC does have to take action. Is that right, Bill?
Like I said, I'm learning.
I believe that would be a proper interpretation. I also, if this year it was 827,000, I question whether or not this shouldn't, if it's going to be in that vicinity again, this may well should be a board item, because it would then be in excess of 750,000, which would implicate board approval under Rule 1.16.
Well, how do we determine that, the answer to that question? How much this is going to be?
It looks like, isn't it listed as, I believe it's listed as one item, is it not?
But it's an
what I've
item
got, is one item.
that whereby, and my understanding too is that if each of the individual contracts are under $100,000, that's.
There are going to probably be about 20 contracts, and the limit is $50,000 per contract. So the amount will be, I mean, the amount of each individual contract is under the $100,000 limit that we take to the board.
Well, do we do on piecemeal, or we do?
That really is up to the board. It's within the board's discretion. The rule that the board adopted, Rule 1.16, governing contracts for goods or services, grants, et cetera, does not clearly address a number of different contracts coming under the same topic or rubric, if you will. But I would suggest that this is an ideal item for the board to make a decision on how it wishes for this item, as well as any others that would be similar to this item going forward, to be handled.
Well, let me ask you a question about this. If we think that in total it's going to be $1 million.
Yes, sir.
And then we start breaking it down in $100,000 increments to get it under the wire.
Yes,
that
sir.
doesn't smell good to me.
Well, that's why I suggested this is an ideal situation for the board to give us, staff, guidance on how it wishes to interpret Rule 1.16, not only for this item, but as well as other items going forward.
Well,
let me make clear that is, and not at all, what we're doing. In other words, this is it's $50,000 max. It's all, it's always been that way, and we think it'll be 20. It depends on which of the P16 councils are doing it.
And I understand what you're saying and where you come from. What I'm trying to do is make sure that there's no perception that we try to get around a rule to do this. No. And it may be better to go ahead and take it to the board and approve it as opposed to us dealing with it here. Now, I guess we could theoretically have a vote and recommend that it go to the board to be approved in this setting, and it seems to me that would be more appropriate.
That would be an appropriate committee action, because it is your recommendation, whatever it is, that will go to the board tomorrow.
Okay, well, is there any question?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not on your committee, but...
Out on the board agenda?
I was going to say, is it on the board agenda?
No.
Probably not.
I think, it should be a board-level consideration whether we want to give $875,000 to the P16 regional councils. And I personally am not in favor of this unless we have an evaluation by objective criteria, which I've already stated at the committee meeting. But I don't think year after year we ought to give this money to the councils unless we know they're doing some good.
Brenda?
I have to agree with that. I simply don't, now that I understand the agenda item a little better, because it's not really written the way it's been presented, I really feel like I need some more information, certainly about not only the details of the process and the details of the process and the decision-making, who's getting what money, but also, you know, on what basis and how is past performance integrated into what we are giving out as grants again. Is that, I think that's somewhat in line with what you're...
It is, and there is an evaluation component, but as it was explained to me, it was like how many people came to the meetings, which I don't go for that at all. And this money is HB1 money? Is that?
Yes.
And can you remind me what the legislation says about how we're supposed to use the HB1 money?
House Bill 1 funds are to be used to increase college readiness and to decrease the number of students who participate in developmental education. And one of the goals of both the P16 Council and of our unit is to increase the college-going culture. And the P16 councils are something that we viewed as instrumental in doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all very familiar with P16 councils, but the question is, are they effective?
Well, let's say, let me tell you that this year we have had 4 institutes.
I don't care. I don't care about how many people came.
No, darling, wait.
No,
That,
I know
what I'm saying is that we've had 4 institutes, and what we've concentrated on is things like data.
I know. I was at my committee meeting. I know all that. But I still think we should have a very stringent evaluation criteria that says, are there more college-going kids in the hospitals where there are these pieces?
These are being evaluated, but it is going to be over a 3-year period. So right now, we just have preliminary information.
I know. I've been told all that, and I understand that. But I think that, you know, I mean, this is nearly $1 million. I just don't know that it's I don't know whether it's a good idea to go ahead and give this much money again to a bunch of people that are going to get together and meet with the best intentions, and we won't know for 3 years whether it's effective.
Well, and I said I think that we've made such an effort this year. We've on data and providing them data, giving them training on data analysis, which we are continuing into the summer with small group data analysis trainings, with strategic planning. We've had several presentations on helping them, because some of them have a good strategic plan. Others are learning and putting together a strategic plan. So we're trying to do everything we can to support them to be successful.
I realize that, and I think
Can I
that's
say something?
fine. But
I think staff, at least I've heard the board's concerns, and I think the staff needs to step back and address those concerns. And I think that's appropriate to do at this point. So step back. I want you to go back to your offices and figure out answers for this. I think we'll need to come back at the July agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to try to come at it from a different way to get to the same point that Lynn was getting to, that I think Brenda spoke to as well, and that is looking at the big picture first. $1 million is a substantial amount of money. And the way that we're asked to look at this is piecemeal at 50-50-50, so it falls below the radar screen. It seems like to me, David, what we're trying to do is evaluate, first of all, the entire program. And I understand the output that we're talking about, but I think what we're trying to get to is what's the input? Is the overall program successful? Then we could look at the little pieces if we had to. But is that a fair stat? Is that a fair stat?
That is, and I'm sorry, Laurie's out of the room because she, the Houston P16 Council has built-in objective criteria for its own evaluation, and I'm sure that there's plans to do that for all of these. It's just, is it the best way to spend the money?
And the reality with evaluations is you can have evaluations after the first year, the second year, and third year, and this really should have been presented as an RFP for projects with standards and that type of information rather than individual projects. And I think that's one of the issues in this as well,
That makes
because
sense.
that's what you're really doing, and I think in the past you considered it in that context. But it's important with all of these, and you've talked about it a lot, and the staff can tell you, I've talked about it a lot, we need evaluations, we need sound evaluations, and we shouldn't go out back to the well again unless we've really determined what worked and didn't work, as we do an RFP, to make sure we make those adjustments in what we ask for. If it's not working, let's not keep doing it. But if we found that certain things don't work, let's not fund that aspect of it again. I agree with you.
I'm really for the P16 councils, and I want to be able to ask the legislature for more money for them, but we can't do it until we know more.
What we're buying. Let me ask you, excuse me, go ahead.
The only thing that I was going to make the recommendation, since we know it's not on the agenda for tomorrow, and we're probably not going to vote on it piecemeal, and the recommendation of Dr. Gardner is that we table it.
And I personally think that's a good recommendation, but I still have a question. Have we made any commitments to these people to do anything?
Oh, absolutely not yet. I mean, they're still finishing out the end of the year now, where they're going to be supplying
Okay,
us.
so if we do exactly what Bob and David just suggested,
We can do that
this does not
easily.
cause a bunch of heartburn because we made commitments and they're expecting a lot of money to come soon.
No.
Okay. I wanted that on the record.
Because
Okay.
they would actually be undertaking the starting in September, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then we will just vote to table this then until we're ready to discuss it in a more appropriate setting. Bill?
Could I just would like to ask for, I think I'm getting guidance so that I can advise folks in the agency going forward, but just to make it clear, is it the board's, this committee's interpretation then of our rule that where we have a large amount of money, but it's going to be divided among a number of contracts, none of the contracts of which would exceed $100,000, therefore meeting AOC's jurisdiction level. Is it the board's feeling that it's the large amount of money that really is the driver, and therefore it should come before the committee, even if the contracts themselves are under the board, this committee's jurisdiction level of 100,000?
Well, let me react to that. I think Bob said it right. If we do it in the smaller numbers and in smaller increments, we get it under the radar screen. That's for sure. But do we really want to do that? We're now talking about for the last few days and for the months and years about auditing and keeping everything very transparent and clean. And from where I sit, if you start breaking, if you know that you're going to spend a bunch of money, I'll pick $1 million out of the air, but you start, approving it in smaller increments, that does not look good to me. Because it's what it says to me is you're trying to get around the rule, whatever the rule is.
Well, okay, I'm not going to, okay, let's say there's 40 contracts at $25,000 each, which would be $1 million. My question really is, do we bring the entire, as staff, would you like us to bring the entire amount, the entire program to you and tell you how the contracts would likely break down? Yes,
Well,
sir.
Bill, before we get all the way into the weeds, how many of these would we actually have as a practical matter?
Sir, I think David Gardner is probably in a better position to answer that question.
Well, I think going back to what I said earlier, that this is really a program in a sense, and I think I would consider that you're approving a process for soliciting proposals for whatever the total amount is, $1 million. And I would, in the past, we have taken brought that kind of thing to the board. And I think that's appropriate to do. And the question I think then becomes, if you approve that, and it's done with the stipulation that these are under, 50,000 or under, do you want to see all those individual contracts which were within the guidelines you proposed earlier? And I think you may not, so long as you approve the process and the conditions and whatever. But that's up to you. With our advanced research program, you approve the RFP, but you also approve the individual projects. You approve the individual projects with Carl Perkins. you have some of those today, but you approve the overall program first. So I think at some level, you need to conceptually approve the program. And part of that's through the committee, and again, it's unfortunate Ms. Bricker is not here because that's something that is talked about in her committee from a programmatic standpoint. And so, I mean, one could even say, should the programmatic committee consider the overall concept before it even comes to this committee?
And I think we did.
And you
but,
did, yes.
But we did consider it, and but we didn't. I didn't know at the time of the committee meeting and didn't ask how much the total amount was. But I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's the way we're approaching it that because the legislature gave us that money. We're responsible to see it spent the best way it can be. That's a lot of money, and that bulk should. I think it should come before us, just like everything else, the program and the individual contracts as well.
But I thought you made a good point earlier on, Lynn, about the results that are being achieved. How do we get our arms around that? Are we too early in the program to know what the results is? Because I'm reluctant to throw a lot of money at the wall, and we don't really know what it is that, what kind of results we're getting. I'm not against this. I'm just trying to get all the rules right.
Well, under the legislation, can we spend that money somewhere else, Evie, if we decide not to do it through the regional councils?
Yes, you could be spending it. The thing to remember is that this is money for this biennium, so that the money, if it's not out of the agency by August 31st, then it will not.
It goes back.
Early on, there was some discussion by the board that addressed the concern of that the initial development of PETA 16 councils required some level of staff support, and a desire to support that, to help support the creation of the council. So many of these councils are relatively new, within the last year and a half. And so I would think, number one, that the role of this kind of funding would evolve over time, and I think we need to make sure that we're on top of that, because what you need initially is not what you would want later, and you have to consider the fact, should this go on, and should we in fact be building councils that are weaned from this kind of support? Should we really be continuing this support forever? And I think that's a critical question.
Are there any dollars in this budget for it? I'm sorry? For a continuation?
Well, this is this is essentially to continue to support projects if their proposals meet the criteria that are set forward to continue. But I think with the amounts of money the board's been talking about with HB1, since its receipt, that we need to have good evaluations. You received a report and I believe it was at the January meeting on evaluations of a large number of programs that were in detail. In most of those cases, the subsequent grants that were provided were, in some cases, modified based upon the results of the initial program evaluations in terms of what worked and what didn't work, so that the dollars would be used more effectively. So, it's hard. I would never argue that we need to evaluate whether these dollars are being effective or not.
One of the concerns about the P16 programs, like a few other programs out in the field we've had, has been that they're so diffuse and they have little focus. And if we had an RFP and we could give some guidance that they would, I think when they're established, they should have a goal of increasing the number of college-going students, decreasing the number of kids in developmental ed, and support should be based on that, and that might be more helpful in getting more funding.
Yeah. I think if we can bring some closure to this, that the idea that David had of tabling this issue is the right one. It's not because we're against it.
No.
We just want to understand more about it before we start committing large sums of money. And if we table it, then you guys can go back to the drawing board and then come back to us on the next go-round, because we're not turning you off. We're just saying, hey, recalibrate and come back to us. And I think that when the dust settles, it's probably going to wind up with the board as opposed to being here. But that's just my guess. Okay. Brenda?
This has been an interesting discussion for me for many reasons, but, you know, a lot of times when I see agenda items and so on, I just assume that we've been appropriated specifically for these funds to be used in the manner in which you're asking for our approval. For instance, now I know that this $875,000, there are options for us to use the money. If we didn't use it here, we could use it in other ways. I wasn't aware of that. I didn't assume that, and I don't know what those options could be or would be. But, you know, as a board member, I would like to know as we go forward, and I don't know how you give that information to us, but you know, I think it's not only important to look at what item are you recommending, but what are the alternatives? Because if I don't know that there can be alternatives, I'm trying to figure out how I know in my mind that I'm making the best decision for the use of that money. I know there are going to be times, I'm assuming again as well, that there is a specific appropriation for a specific purpose, so we won't always encounter what I'm talking about. But in the instances when we are, I would like that to somehow again be communicated to us. Does that make sense?
I think I might have a suggestion for that.
Okay.
Tell me if I recall incorrectly. I believe this is specifically included within the work plan of the P&S committee to pursue this. We're not required to do it by the legislation, but it's within the context of the legislation. And so that is pursuing a direction set forward by the committee, you know, in their work plan.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean it can't be revisited, and it certainly doesn't mean that we shouldn't be evaluating the success of the effort. But I think that would be one useful thing potentially to include in this, is if it's not required, if this isn't directly required by the legislation, if it's part of the work plan developed by one of the board committees in terms of something to pursue. So you would at least know the distinction. Is that clear?
What? Yeah, what you said makes sense. I mean, I think any proposal like this ought to have the funding source on it, certainly the total amount of dollars involved. It would help us evaluate things a lot better.
Funding source would be very helpful. That gives us a lot of information right there.
That's a good point.
Well, coming back to tabling the motion.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Bob Shepherd, seconded by?
Second.
By Bob Wingo. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. We'll table it. You guys bring it back to us. We'll revisit this thing in another.
Bring it up in October, will you?
You have vested interest in that. Okay, next item on the agenda is the request for application regarding work-study mentorship program. And Celeste?
Well, we're here to say that, yeah, come on, Celeste, but we want to say that this is exactly the same thing as the last one.
No, it's actually not.
It's not quite.
This is on the board, this is on the agenda for
Oh,
tomorrow.
it's on the board's agenda for tomorrow.
And this is a case,
And if that's the case.
yeah.
Exactly like the last.
No, it's not.
No.
Okay.
It is on the board agenda tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And this is to address your concerns.
Okay.
This is actually funding that is specifically for this purpose.
Okay.
There's not any other things we can do with this funding. This is Senate Bill 1050 that provided and established funding for the Work-Study Mentorship Program, and we're seeking your approval to issue a request for applications for the next 2 fiscal years, FY10 and FY11. This money will be granted in smaller increments to institutions of higher education who have a work-study mentorship program. We anticipate that we'll issue approximately 40 grants for a total of 1,000 students, about 1,000 collegiate G-Force members. Questions?
Questions, anyone?
The only difference, the one significant difference that we're requesting is that right now, these are currently 12-month contracts, and we're seeking your approval to do the RFA for a 2-year funding cycle.
And is evaluation built into the program?
Evaluation has not been built into the program. You'll have to excuse me because I just started this in October. I'm looking at Chris for help. My understanding is that evaluation is going to be built into the program, but there isn't a formal evaluation piece in this program currently.
I make a motion to table the item.
Well, I think that's the same, I agree with that.
Second.
Yeah. Okay, we have a move and a second to table it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Now, you had this on the agenda for tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we've tabled it so it would not be on the agenda for tomorrow. Well, I guess under the same provisions that we talked about before, to recalibrate and bring it back to us and when we know more about it. Is that where you're coming from, Brenda?
Yes, sir.
Bob?
I just think based on what we've discussed, the evaluation process and all the components need to be complete, which will make it much easier for us to vote this through.
Okay, so we have a motion to table it? Okay, Brenda, second?
Yeah. I second.
Second by Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is request for application regarding Educator Quality College Readiness Standards, CRS, demo site.
I move we table. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, Susan.
That's all right.
I've got 3 more pages here. We can table them all if you like.
Board members, this is a request for us to be able to issue a request for applications for a competitive process to establish a demonstration site to facilitate modeling and demonstration of effective pedagogy and instruction for the college readiness aligned curriculum to benefit pre-service teachers, in-service teachers, and high school students. Basically, what this project will be doing is to select an institution of higher education that has an educator preparation program, along with their community college partner, and we hope 4 high schools that work with their pre-service teachers. We want to be able to demonstrate pedagogy and curriculum that is aligned with the college readiness standards so that pre-service teachers working with well-trained in-service teachers will impact high school students all the way up and down through a deep alignment of college readiness standards. It will be a demonstration site that will develop a tool that we can use with other educator preparation programs that will help them measure the college readiness aspects of that educator preparation program. During this demonstration project, the tool will be developed and will be administered. It will be tweaked, and it will provide us evidence about the quality of the educator preparation program and hopefully the high school program, as it's also aligned with college readiness standards. There will be a third-party evaluation of this, and the House Bill 1 strategic plan that went to the state P16 Council, the coordinating board, and the Commissioner of Education has an objective that states we should be having educator preparation programs, prepare new teachers in ways that are consistent with the college readiness standards. So this will help fulfill the P16 action plan. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
I have a question. What is all this going to cost?
We're asking for up to $500,000 for the pilot project that would go from this year through August of 2011.
Lynn?
So Susan, when we finish with this, will we have like a video, or what will we have to use?
We will have, our plans are to have a framework with a tool that an educator preparation program will start with the IHEs because we're working with them directly, but that tool could be used with any educator preparation program to help the program assess how well the educator preparation program implements and is aligned with the college readiness standards.
And the tool would be
It would be a tool that we would use, that we would then train other educator preparation programs to use.
Okay, so I'm trying to get real basic here. It's going to be like a piece of paper with stuff on it?
I would imagine in this day and age, we might be able to develop online, for example, an interactive online tool.
Okay.
In the old days, it would be paper and pencil. Yes.
The high school tool that we're hoping to align with this is one that is almost there and is developed by EPIC, and that is a full online program.
Oh, okay.
And so we hope to use the same kind of methodology to come up with, in fact, more than the need that has been raised today about more evaluation tools. We don't have enough tools currently to say whether an educator preparation program is delivering quality instruction, especially as it regards college and career readiness standards. So this gives us two things. It gives us, as a deliverable, a tool for evaluation, but then it also gives us that experience of the higher education institution that participates, their community college partners, and the high schools, this experience of having gone through this. We can find also different ways to journal this experience. Certainly video is an easy way of doing that, and we've been doing that with other projects.
Well, that sounds good.
As I read this is an application, a request for application, but not the $500,000?
Sir, we're asking for permission to issue a request for application, expecting a number of higher ed institutions to compete for this demonstration project, and we would like to have an allocation of up to $500,000 to fund that demonstration site.
And what is the timetable on that?
We would like to issue the RFP within the next couple of weeks, issue it so that they could start work this summer and before next fall, and we would finish the project by the summer of 2011.
And where is this money supposed to come from?
This is House Bill 1 money, sir.
House Bill 1. And we know we've got it.
Yes, sir, we do.
It's just a matter of appropriation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Discussion. Brenda?
Well, again, that gets back to if it's HB1 money, I'm assuming that we have other opportunities in which to spend this money. And again, I don't know what those opportunities are. But number two, is it appropriate for us on RFAs to list a not-to-exceed dollar amount? Here we're telling the public, this is going to be close to $500,000. Is that something we should be doing, or should we just take the dollar amounts off and see how the competitive bids come in? I'll give you an extreme example. There may be somebody out there who's going to bid this thing at $150,000, but not if they see a $500,000
correct
price tag on there. That of course is an extreme example, but I think you get the point of the question.
That makes the point. Maybe an extreme example, but it makes the point.
Well, the flip side of the argument is, and I understand Brenda's point of view on this, the flip side of the argument is you're not giving the bidder any leeway in understanding what the value of the bid is and how and what kind of resources to put into it. And if you have it open-ended, do you really get what you're looking for? I think a not-to-exceed bid, as long as the bid points can be substantiated, may be a way to look at it. It's just another thought. If I were bidding on a contract, I'd like to have some idea of what the value is, but that's just my point of view.
As it is competitive, perhaps one institution would think, well, I really want this and I know how to do it. I have the experience. Certainly I'll stay under that. It's all competitive, so.
Well, I think to Brenda's point of view, though, I think the
opportunity.
key thing is if there is bid criteria that everyone has to meet,
there will be.
Then it's evaluating what those bid criteria are and determining where they come in. For example, if someone's bidding and the cost of labor, just for an example, in Dallas or Houston is going to be different than the cost of labor in Amarillo.
Yes.
So, there's a lot of different factors that you have to take into consideration.
Yes.
So would that be suggesting that a range as opposed to a set figure?
Well, I think for one thing, it probably decides on what it is that you're trying to produce. I think for, in my business, which was pure services, I never I can't recall one time in 15 years I saw a contract that had a not-to-exceed amount on it because we were just bidding labor. Perhaps products are different, and it sounds like Mr. Wingo's experience has been different. So maybe it is on a, per
I've seen
RFA
them both
basis.
ways.
I don't know.
I've seen them open-ended, and when I get an open-ended one, mine usually comes in high. But that's just me.
Yeah. Lori?
Well, weighing in on this a little bit, you don't want the lowest bid, you want the lowest qualified. And so that gives them the leverage to make sure that not only is it a good response, but that it's a legitimate and well-evaluated response. So
That's why you have to have the metrics that look at
right.
every single point on the bid.
But the other point I want to make is kind of on the other side of it, and that's the softer side. I can't think of anything that's more important that we do. From whatever perspective we look at, if we're looking at closing the gaps, if we're looking at alignment, if we're looking at college readiness, if we're looking at the fact that we've got high school teachers teaching what they feel is exactly what students need to know, and then
But that's
community
not what we're
colleges and
talking about,
universities. Oh, you already talked about it?
But that's not what we're talking
No.
about. We're talking about how to get to the point where you do it.
I know, I understand that, and that's why I said on the other side of it, I can't think of anything that we do that's more important
Yeah.
than this, and so that's why I was getting to the point that we have to do this right, and we have to make sure that whoever it is that submits really has the capacity of really providing the best service, because where our teachers are trained and how they're trained in professional development is probably the most important thing that we can do as an agency. That's what I was trying to say.
Thank you. I didn't fully understand this process. I'm grateful for you all explaining it to me. But in that case, it seems to me we could be very specific about the kind of tool we wanted to end up with.
Yes, ma'am, that is
Yes.
true. We have some very good ideas we would like to extend. There are some tools out there that address close to what we need, but there are no tools. Remembering that Texas has college and career readiness standards that are unique to Texas.
Yeah.
And what we don't have is any specific tool that's valid, reliable, et cetera, that helps us look at or to do a self-study. If you're a college, this tool would be specific to our state and would be valid, reliable self-assessment. So those institutions can bring, if they find that they are not preparing teachers ready to walk out the door and deliver instruction for college-ready students, college career-ready students, then they need to adjust. They're not shooting at the right target.
Yeah.
And so the tool, it's a tool. In fact, your interest in evaluation is very commendable. It's extremely difficult to assess staff development and professional development effects. You're unhappy with how many people came and whether they enjoyed and learned something. To get to have we had an impact, we've got to develop the tools that are specific to that impact, and this will help us start that process. It won't finish it.
I have one last comment. I think and maybe it's just me, I think what the board is, the committee's struggling with is we don't have adequate information in terms of scope of work as to what the monies are going to be spent for. I mean, we have a two-paragraph thing, and I'm not saying you need war and peace, but there needs to be some kind of bullet point explanation about what we're doing. You're giving us the explanation, but the explanation's not in the request.
May I respond?
Yes, ma'am.
Where we are right now, and within our internal process, we are developing, and may I introduce Araceli Ortiz, who is our director. I'm another title. But we are in the process of, and we have a scope of work that will be very specifically outlined in the RFA. We're requesting permission essentially to develop an RFA and to issue an RFA, and that RFA has all of that detail that you are interested in, and we do have a number of bullet points. There will be this, there will be that, there will be this, there will be that, and that's part of what the proposal will respond to, and we would be happy to adjust that process if that's needful to you.
Well, I don't think this says that. that that's what you're asking for, but maybe I'm just dumb. I don't know.
Request for application is what we're hoping to get approved to issue, and a request for application.
We have here our draft of that request for application, but the process asks us to first receive the approval to
I think it's
to
just the
go
wording.
forth and-
You know,
Oh,
you need to
yes.
say approval for a request for
I see what you're
application.
saying.
Because we, you know, I did because I saw it in the committee meeting, but no one,
Yes.
the people who weren't at the committee meeting didn't get what the thing was even asking for.
Yes, I understand.
What you're saying is, at the point in which you want the board to make the award, we are going to be
Yes.
provided with more information, which is going to include
It would be the complete proposal.
the scrutiny of the selection of the vendor, the
Be
end
the,
product.
who has reviewed this, the rank, I mean, we can give you the complete
be the
process.
proposal, the rubrics used to assess, how they meet all of those qualifications, all of the deliverables that we would be expecting, so that we can weigh whether, for the deliverables that we're expecting, is the grant a fair amount to give us the kind of quality material and service that we're requesting. So yes, that would happen one more time before the AOC at least.
Correct.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me I'm hearing that you're comfortable with the concept of the application and so forth, but reluctant to commit $500,000 right up front in one fell swoop on this whole deal.
Well,
I don't know whether that's right or not. I'm asking you.
I agree with what Bob's saying in terms of sometimes, I don't know that we have enough information, but I also understand this is just the request for the application and more information would come with the award. My other question was, and I think you were out of the room at the time, but certain items we get specifically appropriated to use in certain ways. This is not one of those instances. This is HB1 money, so there are alternative uses for this money, and going forward, I think staff is going to let us know that, because as a board member, it's important to know what are our alternatives and is this the highest and best use of the money. I do take some comfort in knowing that Ms. Bricker says that this is a highest and best use of this money. I think that's what I'm hearing you say, and that does give me a level of comfort, because I know that you are quite involved in this.
Well, I mean, I'm familiar with it, of course, and I understand where they're coming from, and I understand your concerns are more on the structure of how.
process.
Yeah, and I understand that too, and I can appreciate your concerns.
Well,
I don't know where that leaves.
if we get a proposal with all the detail in it that you're talking about now, I'm still coming back to the money. Do we wait and get that proposal in hand and read it and understand it clearly and then commit money? Or, as we're talking about here, do we want to commit for the whole loaf? And now, I don't know what you ladies are talking about myself. That's out of my arena here, so I'll be very honest about that. But I just always go to the money issue.
I think there are two parts. One is this what they're proposing something that's worthwhile? And I think,
agree with that.
And that's one side of it. The other is how the RFA is structured.
Right.
So that if I'm a vendor and I would put in my RFA and say, oh, mine's going to cost, $499,999, versus $100,000, and that's what they're grasping, that concept and trying to figure out what's the best way. I mean, there's bound to be a precedent for this. Anytime there is an RFQ, an RFP, an RFA, there's bound to be a precedent for if there's a cap on the amount, which there always is. I mean, if we're budgeted as an agency for X amount of money, and there are 10 different RFAs that come in, and should we, how that is appropriated, there's got to be a precedent.
But see, that's the thing. I don't think we are appropriated with a certain cap for this particular RFA. That gets back to one of my points, which is this is HB1 money.
And where did that number come from?
Yeah, I mean, this money can be used for, other purposes. broken up or in conjunction with other money, et cetera.
Well, I
So
guess theoretically, it could be open-ended too if you're not careful.
That's correct. Could be. And maybe they'd have an excellent proposal that was $620,000, and we don't put this on it, we might be able to do that.
would this be, I'm just going to throw out an idea, and it might be a bad one, and I'm
That's
hoping
what we're here for.
it's not. But and again, it stems from the fact that I just don't think I have enough information to envision the whole follow-through, and so I hate to approve something now and then have issues with it at the time of the award, because I'm sensitive to the vendors also. I'm just wondering if perhaps this is something that Ms. Bricker's committee should look at in terms of what is the product here? Is this the way to approach the product? And is it the best use of HB1 money? You know, all the elements that we're talking about today, or is, I'm just throwing that out.
I think it has a lot of merit.
I don't know.
Lori and Lynn have more
Not trying
experience
to
in
make a
this and all
big
the rest of it
project
put
out of
together.
anything, but this seems like a serious issue here when we're talking about educator quality.
We just wanted to mention that we did present this to the PNS committee, and that we have spent many, many meetings in staff discussing the use of this remaining House bill money, which again, we should make use of and utilize before the end of this fiscal year, which, we're trying, that's why we want to award it soon, so that we have a head start on this important tool. We've had these kinds of considerations. In fact, the paper from which this stems is a paper that we developed and reviewed even with the commissioner, with Dr. Gardner, with his staff, and we talked and submitted a very similar type of proposal for greater funding to the governor's office. So it's all coming from a lot of study, a lot of discussion, a lot of staff time to consider whether this is the best use. We decided that it was the best use. We presented it to the PNS committee. We received very positive comments there. And that was our opportunity to see where we headed in the right direction. And we were given the go-ahead that this was very interesting, and in fact, we want to see this results as soon as possible would be great. So we've gotten a head start on even developing the RFP with all of those details, because we want to get it out and see what kind of response we have from the IHEs. This is all that we can do. We've tried to do the due diligence that you're requesting, but, we're certainly open to doing more.
Mr. Chairman?
I think you've done it, it's just, it's not apparent in this. It's hard. And in a way, what they're working with is something that's totally unknown, because we've just gotten the college readiness standards, and we have to figure out how the teachers can know about all this. And so it's very hard to say anything that makes much sense at this point. It's just, we know we have to improve the quality of teachers teaching these college readiness standards, and it's an imperative. It's a huge imperative.
I might add something. I think Dr. Phillips' remark is a really good one, and as you review the agenda materials, I think the staff didn't do an adequate job in addressing the discussions that were held with the committee on March 23rd and the other things that have been held. So I think part of what we're learning here is really how to distinguish the process and bring you the adequate information, because each of these items, actually, the last three I think you've gone to, were on the March 23rd agenda of the PNS committee, and one of the directions previously from the AOC committee was asking that the programmatic committees address the programmatic aspect, and this committee addressed the financial aspects. Now, granted, you can't really divorce those.
Well,
they're together, but I don't think you got adequate information on this to go forward in the agenda materials. I think that's evident. I mean, it's very cryptic.
And Mr. Chairman, I certainly don't mean to go on and on about one agenda, but there is no cross-referencing here to PNS. I'm not on PNS. I never would have known that, but also I don't know that it was presented in PNS in terms of, hey, we're going to bring this as, you know, a potential award in the near future, and we deem this highest and best use of the money. I don't know, but I don't know if the...
I think that you're absolutely
Okay, well,
right.
see,
I think that's the point Dr. Phillips was
But there's
making,
a
is that wasn't
disconnect
presented well to
between being
you.
on operations and not
Yeah.
being on PNS.
Right.
Well, and
I think
you're right.
You're right.
And that's
You
what
need to know
Dr.
that
Phillips
information.
mentioned, that the chairman of the different committees are not on this committee. I'm not on this committee. So I would,
And I'm not on this committee.
so we would not even be here.
Yeah, but you know what's going on.
Yeah, but if
There
we
are
weren't.
others of us around here that don't have a clue.
No, but the point is maybe structurally moving forward, that when committee assignments are made, that the committee chairs are on this committee. The committee chairs of the committees that we currently chair would be on this committee so that we could bring that information. I think that's the disconnect.
And even some recognition that when your committee votes on something, that's recognized in the materials that
And it's a
been
really
reviewed
good
by
idea, and it was
committee, and
her
you've
idea.
signed off on it at that point. But
Right.
you would still legitimately have some questions, because you are putting money into a program, and you might want to ask, well, I understand it's been signed off on, but why? I mean, is this the right amount of money? Is it being well spent? Those are still items that, even with the process we've described, you should be addressing.
And I appreciate your remark about staff response, because I did bring up these issues at the committee meeting, and there just was no response. It's just, this is going to be an item on the AO meeting thing, and so I'm bringing it, I bring it up again. What else can I do? We don't vote on things, obviously, at those meetings, right? I mean, our telephone conversation, we don't take a vote.
Right.
So.
I know.
You were saying, Brenda?
I was saying that now that I understand the item a little better, and it is an RFA, which is the beginning point, and it was looked at in PNS, and it sounds like with a very high comfort level, covering all of, I know, my concerns, I would be prepared to make a motion on this item.
Okay, any other discussion?
The only discussion would be, do you all prefer that it be open, the amount be open?
We're happy to go either way. We have some RFOs where we have not put an up to level, and I've actually had proposal fees that have been more than two times more than we have
Estimated.
budgeted, because it certainly puts that proposal more or less out of the running. And I don't know whether, when you speak about vendors, I don't know whether that's good for the vendors or not to have something to target. We've gone other ways and obviously had the $499,000 proposal, and I understand your concern with that. So we're more than happy to go in either direction.
One of the
we can
things
go with that.
One of the things that we have discussed is to have a bidders conference beforehand, and I think that if we did that, we could explain in very good detail what high level of quality we're expecting in each of these deliverables, and I think that should, for the savvy bidder, that should tell them, what kind of effort and expense this is going to require, and maybe at that point then we wouldn't need to list the amount. We'd basically be just describing it so well that they'd have to meet that. It would come in around this amount, because that's what we've estimated.
What, in terms of our motion and how it might affect you in the future, what if the motion said about $500,000 instead of is? Because I guess whatever this committee votes on today is set in stone then.
Or not to exceed, I guess.
Well.
Right, and not to exceed, and we don't have to publish it to them. It could just be that for us, we know that we'd be considering proposals maybe perhaps up to that amount if they met the qualifications, but we wouldn't necessarily need to publish that in the RFP so that when they're reading, they're not seeing that figure.
Okay, well, Brenda, you have made it us aware that you're comfortable to make a motion.
I make a motion.
How would you structure that phraseology?
I make a motion to approve the request for applications regarding educator quality college readiness standards demo site with estimated cost for the,
of approximately
just leave it
something.
without the dollars. We want to put the dollars in there.
That's fine.
Can we just leave it? Have we made a decision to include the dollar amount? I'm sorry.
We haven't, but I mean, this meeting's public meeting broadcast. I mean,
Yeah, you're right.
this is
Demo
all-
site with an
this is
estimated
all-
cost for the project not to
This is
exceed
all on the-
500,000, and this is an issue for the future, yes.
Better get this place back
I
to you.
know.
And I think it should, part of what needs to be
I'll
made clear
second that
to,
motion.
to staff is that because the upper limit's 500,000, if we have an adequate grant that's 150,000 that does this, that's what we
Yes.
should
Yes,
go for.
absolutely.
And I think you need to understand that.
Yes, sir.
We actually have
We need to be-
criteria that looks at the budget and the reasonableness of cost, and there are points that go with that in the criteria. Thank you.
Okay, do we or don't we have a motion?
We do.
We have a motion and a second.
We have a motion by Brenda and a second by Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much, ladies. Sorry
Thank you.
to keep you here so long.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is consideration of contracts in excess of $100,000 and less than $750,000. Okay, and the next point of that is a request to extend a contract for security guard services for fiscal year 2010 for $119,241 based on a 12-month term. And let's see, that's Susan Corrine.
Susan's here to answer questions, but I can simply present this to you, and if
Okay.
there are more questions, we can call her up.
Okay.
This is our security services at the front desk. We have a contract for the current year with a clause that we can extend it for one more year. In light of the discussion earlier, we would extend it for a year with a 60-day notice to,
Move to new digs.
well, if we have to move, to cancel the contract. So simply providing for security services for FY10 or a portion of FY10 as needed. So we would seek your approval to extend that contract.
Okay.
And there are no issues with this vendor that you're aware of?
Issues as far as performance? No, ma'am.
Well, as far as anything but performance.
No,
Okay.
Yeah, well, those occasions where we have had a complaint or we've addressed it with management and they've taken care of it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so it's motion time again.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, by Brenda, second. By Bob Wingo, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is amendment to a contract with Integrated Human Capital, IHC, for temporary employee service for fiscal year '09. Arturo, you're going to speak to that? It's two-pronged, I believe.
I will. It's that, you know, there's two that are related to this, but the
Yeah.
first, number two, is for current year FY09, for current year, which is FY09. We currently have a contract with IHE, Integrated Human Capital, in the amount of $100,000 for temporary services. We also have a contract with another vendor, I believe their name is Apple One, that we could, and we can use either one of those vendors to provide our temporary services. We have started using IHE, the Integrated Human Capital contract, almost exclusively, not totally exclusively, but almost exclusively, for the main reason that they are a certified hub, and we, of course, are very, very committed to the hub initiative, and they are providing good services. Between the two contracts, we had authority to go up to $195,000 in the current year. What we are asking is approval to amend the IHE for an amount of not to exceed $300,000 for the current year. In other words, an extension or an additional $200,000. These services are provided as needed. The money is not like we're budgeting another $200,000. The funds for this expenditures come from salary savings of those positions that are open or vacant for any reason and for any length of time. So we would like to finish out the year with IHC and seek your approval to extend that contract or to amend that contract for that amount.
Any discussion on that?
This include what we pay the people who come to do the work? Does this amount include the pay of the temporary workers?
Yes, yes.
Oh, well, thank goodness. I thought, gee, I'm going right away into this business.
This is the total cost.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Brenda makes a motion. Second. Seconded by Bob Shepherd. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries. One more item for you, Toro. Number 3, that's request for approval to execute one or more contracts for temporary employee services in year 2010.
It is the same concept, Mr. Hinton, except it's for next year. What we are requesting is approval to go out on bids and to evaluate those bids and to award a contract for temporary services to the best bidder, to the one that will provide the best services to us for 2010. Again, we respectfully request approval to seek bids for next year.
Questions?
Okay.
A couple questions.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions out of the 100, because again, this is a new bid, new contract, $400,000. Out of 100% score, what is the scoring criteria?
We haven't let the bid out yet, but on the current one, when we sent it out,
No. Well, when you send out, the new
bid, right.
What is going to be your criteria for scoring?
Well, we have, what we're thinking right now is 60% of the score will be the bid price, using a cost averaging model. 30% would be the reference or the references, and 10% on a questionnaire of their experience, their knowledge of the market, specific positions that we list, and so forth.
And then also, I'm assuming in the RFP you'll have labor categories, maybe general categories, maybe you'll get
Positions, right.
specific and some for positions.
Yes.
That's really your quality control, especially when you have 60% at price. So I just want assurance that the positions are going to be specified in enough detail where we can control that quality.
You have my assurance that I will look at the RFP personally to ensure that the descriptions are strengthened and that they know exactly what we're looking for and that we will evaluate on.
Okay, because this contract's going to be,
2010.
2 additional, but it's going to fall, it's interesting because it's going to fall in different economic times.
Right.
And that means your labor force is really going to change.
Yep.
And so you could see quality swings too. So again, this is your control for that. So, I would like to make the motion on this, and what I'm hearing and my support for the motion is based on the fact that you are going to ensure that quality control is there and that you are doing the 60-30-10. Okay.
Okay. So you made a motion.
I'll make a motion to
Okay.
approve.
Second.
Second.
Bob Shepherd, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item. Okay. Amendment to a contract for consulting services with the Texas Counseling Association. And that's Dr. Mary.
That's me. I'm back. Live a day. Yeah, just a minute. You have a lot of information here about this project, which we're very excited about, but we need more money. So that's why I'm here. This comes from the College Access Challenge grant that we received from the federal government. And so far, we have been contracting with the Texas Counseling Association for the development of this training. Now, they have used the funds they've been given so far to develop a guide to the Texas Comprehensive Guidance and Counseling Program that integrates the cross-disciplinary standards of our college readiness standards into that guide so that every counselor will see, how do I incorporate these cross-disciplinary standards into my work. They've also developed 3 professional development modules that are aimed at counselors, teachers, and administrators. They wanted purposely to expand the audience beyond counselors, but also to teachers and administrators, on how to create a college-going and career-ready culture in your schools. So in order to complete this project, they need an additional $35,000 to conduct what we're calling a final trainer of trainers session in August, in which all of the trainers that include our Education Service Center, our Regional Education Service Center representatives, and P16 Council representatives, that they will come in August and receive the CDs, all the materials and resources and things that they need, that they walk away, and then over the next year can conduct this training out in schools.
The number was 135,000?
No, 30.
And we've already issued 100,000 to them. We need 35 more.
35 more.
So that you're approving 35 more. Are you reaching in your pocket?
That's the smallest number I've heard in the last several days. Okay. Any further discussion on that then?
And we have an evaluation component big time. You can't get it from the federal government without it. So.
My question is, I know that you're going through the Counselors Association for the state, but that expands beyond what a traditional counselor might be in a particular school, correct? In that there are a lot of models in schools. If the people that are being trained are not just counselors in the traditional sense of the word. Is that correct?
Right. In other words, we have both. They wanted to go beyond, and we thought that was right, to go beyond just counselors. If you're talking about a college-going culture, that you really needed to get past and get into for teachers and administrators. So yes, the modules actually go beyond.
Okay,
just
yeah, I heard you say administrators and teachers. I just want to make sure, because in some schools now, K-12, they're structured differently, where they would have a dean rather than a counselor, and not necessarily a counselor in the traditional. And I'm not speaking against counselors, but I'm just saying that there are some structures that are different, and I wanted to make sure that they were included.
Right. And Lori, the good thing that, and one of the discussions we've had with our P16 Council representatives and our ESC representatives is because the state is so different that we're giving them a training that they then have to make work for their school.
Correct.
And they understand that, because the structures, as you're just saying, are very different.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, moving right along. We have a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Brenda, second by Bob Wingo. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a request for under consideration for approval regarding teacher quality grants for 2009 through 2011. And Elizabeth Powers is going to make this presentation for us, and we will hear her now. Elizabeth?
Actually, Susan's going to start, and I'll answer any questions that you have.
Board members, this is the culmination of this year's process for the teacher quality grants under Title II of the No Child Left Behind Act. You previously approved the issuance of the RFP. What you have now would be the recommendation to award the funding of the projects. These are projects that serve teachers and staff in core academic areas. Our state has specified mathematics and science teachers, and both public and private institutions are eligible to apply. The listing of the recommendations follow, I believe, in your agenda, and by institution and by amount of award. These are competitive, and there are recommendations to award 42 grants.
42 grants for how much?
The total award, I believe, is right at $12 million.
It's over 2 years, so
Over
this
2
year's
years.
funding would be
$6 million a year.
$6.2 million.
$6 million this year and $6 million next year.
Discussion?
Was this something discussed in the participation?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, it's been presented a couple times. We did a presentation in May so that the P&S committee would understand better what the grants were about, what they were allowed to do. And then when the RFP, we did a presentation both to the P&S committee and the AOC committee in October.
Okay, any further discussion? Have a motion? Motion by Bob Wingo. Second by Bob Shepherd. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I had a question. Can I
Okay,
ask-
go ahead now.
The RFP was issued in October?
No, we brought it before the board in October because it needed to go out in January. So,
Okay,
because of the
that's-
quarterly. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, this is the last item on the agenda. Okay, and that is consideration of adopting on an emergency basis the Commissioner's recommendation for a new section 1.19 of Board Rules concerning education and training of board administrators and employees pursuant to 656.048 of the Texas Government Code. And Bill Franz is going to handle this for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is this putting us in?
In order for any state agency to provide training and education to its employees, it must first adopt rules and policies allowing that same training or education to take place. And the section that you mentioned, 656.048, is the section of the Texas Government Code that specifies the requirements. What the coordinating board currently has is a well-crafted policy to allow such training and education for all of its employees and administrative staff and managerial staff. What we do not have at the current time, however, is a rule, a board rule, which would so permit. The board rule apparently was inadvertently omitted when that section was modified this past October board meeting. So what this agenda item is designed to do is to give the coordinating board the authority to go forward with training and education.
And how much does this cost, Bill?
I am sure will vary in any given year depending on the training and education that staff would receive, who the vendors for that training and education are, et cetera. I don't have a particular cost. Arturo might.
Well, this is just authority to use or to send
Correct.
people to training
Correct.
as needed and as the funds are available. It's not a particular,
But that's going to cost something, though, right?
well, sure.
Is it something we can live with?
Well, we have to live within the budget, and so we budget for any training and staff development at the beginning of the year.
Okay, how much we budget for this?
I don't have that figure, but I can get it for you.
I'd like to have it, but is there any discussion on this item? It seems pretty straightforward to me.
Bill, is this just a compliance issue?
It is, sir.
Okay. I move that we.
Yeah, I do too.
I'll second.
Moved by Bob, seconded by Brenda, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. I still want to know how much money we're going to spend on it.
We'll get you that figure.
You know me, I can't get away from money. Okay. Meeting's adjourned.